like, I guess, like, an empowering job would be, like, a doctor or a nurse. And I'm like, I'm sure that's empowering to, like, help people's lives. I'm sure it's not empowering to have to use a food bank still.
Today we have 6 sex workers here to talk about the topic of empowerment and what that means to us. So we have, please wave when I introduce you. We have Luna Doom, they, them, dominatrix, full service sex worker and online sex worker. Luna is a British sex worker living under partial legalisation and a co-founder of the North East Sex Work Collective. They are also a member of the UK Sex Workers Union, and they were a speaker and panellist at the 2025 Sex Worker Weekender. Danielle Peach Ivy, who is a retired full-service sex worker and current online sex worker. Danny is an Australian sex worker living between Australia and Sweden and has worked under both the Nordic model and full decriminalisation. They are a multi-award nominee for the 2026 Australian Adult Industry Choice Awards and the 2026 Australian Adult Industry Awards. Ina Bathory is an online sex worker or digital courtesan with a BA in psychology. Ina is an American online sex worker, a long-time member of the BDSM community, and she also has a degree in psychology with a focus on sex and sexuality. Z Macabre is a dominatrix and online sex worker. Z is a queer, disabled, Indigenous sex worker, writer and activist. They work to teach their Indigenous language to members of their tribe. They are an advocate of the land back movement and an abolitionist advocating for the full decriminalisation of sex work. Solana Ray, they, them, is an online sex worker, cam model, dom, and retired full-service sex worker. Solana is an American dom in the South, Indigenous leftist organiser, lesbian and disability advocate. They've been in the BDSM community for nearly 8 years. They're an English major, an advocate for full decriminalisation of sex work in leftist spaces in the Deep South, actively fighting against censorship bills that have left adult sites and coming largely inaccessible in the region. Our first question, whoever wants to lead off, is how do we define empowerment and how do we think that other people define empowerment?
So I went to Google earlier and got the Cambridge, that's it, the Cambridge Dictionary definition up. And it says gaining freedom and power to do what you want or to control what happens to you. If we're going off of like the definition that's in a generally well-used dictionary. And I think that does encompass this because, like, you know, empowerment's different to every single person. However, by the definition of what empowerment is in the dictionary, it is the freedom and power to do what you want. So the freedom and power to choose to do this job, to like want to do this job. And like to control what happens to you as well. Like that seems very much like for most self-employed sex workers that they get to control what happens to them, what they do or don't consent to. But I think because you can't say that everyone in this industry is empowered, people get like stuck on that and they're like, well, there are people that aren't empowered by this, and it's like, yeah, and there are people that are. And I don't feel like girl boss, pussy power, fuck the tricks, let's like, you know, whenever I say that this work is empowering, I mean that like I've been able to completely change the way that my world and life works and better accommodate my mental illness and my disability because of sex work. And I can't think of anything more empowering than living my life in the most authentic way that's best for me than to call it empowerment.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that comes up for me, at least, is I think when we talk about empowerment, we're usually talking about like material conditions that have changed in our lives for the better. But I think a lot of the times when other people talk about empowerment who haven't done sex work, it's more of like a feeling, you know, to feel empowered, to feel confident, you know. Yeah. And I think we're not looking at it through the same lens almost sometimes.
Well, and I think you're right. And a lot of the people that have a problem with SW often look at it through a very narrow mass media kind of lens. So when they think empowered, they're thinking of like the high-end escort who's, you know, got a Porsche or a Ferrari or is getting picked up, driven around, big pretty woman shopping bags and all that kind of shit. And they don't see how many of us as SWs often have to portray ourselves as being better off than we are. Because if you're like, no, dude, I live in abject poverty right now. I am like fingernails scraping by.
Yeah.
I am praying I can make rent and get just enough food to literally survive. Like, holy shit. No, you have to come out. Oh, darling, no. How do you do? Oh, no, I have thousands of men. And I'm like, bitch, I am trying not to lose my housing right now, but I can't tell everybody that, because that would break the fantasy that we're supposed to be creating.
Yeah.
And would be weaponized against group.
Yeah.
That part.
I think too, people see people, for me, I agree with the things that I was saying about empowerment being able to choose what you do. I would not have the opportunity to be learning my indigenous language and teach it and be able to spend as much time as I do. I spend a lot of time doing that, and I would not have that opportunity if I had a regular 9-to-5 job. There would be no way. I would have no emotional availability to do that, and it's a really big deal. But when people think of empowerment, I think a lot of times, especially people who don't really know anything about sex work specifically, but also people who view sex work as something dirty or bad, they don't see how it could be empowering, because they don't know how they could be empowered doing it. And they think that when you call it empowered, or when you say I'm empowered by doing it, what you're saying is everyone should choose this job because it is empowering. And not at all. No one's saying that. I've never heard anyone that's like, do this job because it's empowering. Something being empowering to me does not mean that it would be or needs to be empowering to you. You just have to believe me when I say that it's empowering.
Yeah, and I think bouncing off of that, where you mentioned other people really focus on the feeling of empowerment rather than the definition of it. And like I said in my intro, I'm an English major, so I get a little pedantic about words, combine that with the autism and I get yep. See, I was just about to say, combine that with the autism and I get real pedantic. The ability to choose what happens to you, that is something that almost nobody is afforded under capitalism, under patriarchy, under white supremacy, under all the whole gambit, rape culture, all of it. And so we talk about, is sex work empowering? And I don't know, I feel pretty empowered when I can on the days where I can make my rent in a day sitting on my bed in sweatpants. And then there are other days where I'm fuck, I gotta get my titties out for men I'm not even attracted. I'm a whole ass lesbian. Okay, let me get my titties out for a man. You know what I mean? To pay my bills. And that feeling of empowerment is in flux even in this job, where overall I do feel very empowered. But the definition of it, without sex work, if I had married somebody significantly worse than my partner, I'd be screwed. I'm disabled. I can't work a 9-to-5. I can't work full-time and take care of myself. So that is empowering.
Yeah.
I found empowerment, with the feeling of it really had these core beliefs that of agency, being heard, choice, having courage, being able to have autonomy and being respected and valuing yourself, which I was researching a lot of features from feminists and stuff, and I would feel a lot of sex workers would say that those are the values that they feel when they work, or some do, some don't. It really is subjective to the person. It's how some things some people do will make some feel empowered, some not. Dressing modestly or showing a bit of skin, how you present yourself. It really is down to the individual.
Yeah. And I think to touch on what Solana said as well about it being constantly in flux, I think people don't think about that very often, of the way that not only is every individual sex worker on a scale of empowerment in a broader sense of higher class, more working class, etc., but also from a day-to-day, almost hour to hour, your level of empowerment in the amount of autonomy you have to make decisions is constantly changing based on whether you've got an emergency bill that's just come in, whether you've just found out you're going to be evicted in 3 months, whether you've got a kid who's just sick for the day and that's putting off your working schedule and you're going to have to make up for it next week. All of those sorts of things will change the amount of bargaining power that you have in your next booking, and then the booking after that, once you've made the money again, all of a sudden you're in this sort of higher place of empowerment, so to speak, because you've got a much more free level of decision over whether or not you take the booking because you can afford not to, you know. So I think it's such a spectrum that like it varies so much based on not only like your financial status, but like your like social and like personal, you know, emotional state, and like all of these things combine and sort of create a level of empowerment that, like you say, is constantly in flux and changing. So I think, yeah, it's just so difficult to encompass in one way.
Yeah.
It also depends on the legislation you're under, because my biggest culture shock going from full decrim, being in Victoria from Melbourne, to Sweden, where there's the Nordic model, which I had never heard of until I was there. And when I thought, how would I make money if I was really in a tight spot? Oh, just like go pick up a shift at the local like establishment. But no, you can't do that in Sweden, and you have to be really careful. When I would speak to Swedish workers and hear how they like couldn't do the same safety protocols we can do here, I felt very privileged, and I could definitely see that, you know, that could definitely affect how empowered someone could be if there's like law restrictions on how they can work.
Yeah. If you're restricted in the ways in which you can protect yourself and the choices you're allowed to make about your own services and your own body and what you're allowed to do and for how much money and all of those sorts of things. I suppose the other thing is, did you find that under the Nordic model you had to decrease your prices to like match the rates of the market? And did that make a difference in how many clients you had to see and what services you had to provide and all of those things? Was that like a disempowering model, do you find?
Well, to go fully online, but then Sweden changed their law legislation to cover digital sex act to be the same charges as pimping and trafficking. I'm going to butcher the Swedish pronunciation of that. But that to me was very disempowering, because I find, like, I'm not going to say this for everyone, but I always found doing in person a lot easier than online. But that's because I'm more used to it. I was more better because I'm more used to it. So having to make that switch against my will, that was not very empowering. And having to learn the tips and bits on how to do it felt like very fish out of water. And then having to deal with different countries and having to change my rates, it felt like I was losing a bit of choice and agency, because I was being treated like someone who couldn't make a choice that wasn't a full-grown adult.
Yeah.
About the like defining empowerment thing, obviously, like I'm in comment sections sometimes, and a lot of the time when people bring up the empowerment thing, I say, but like, what is empowerment to you? And I have never in my fucking life had a rad femme tell me what empowerment is to them, because they've got no idea, because like nothing, they like, what empowers you? Shitting on sex workers and trans people, getting on TikTok and just being horrid. That's what empowers them. Talking down to women who are less than them, but they can't say that on TikTok, so they just run away. But I've asked so many times, like, and people who've like come up to me in good faith as well, because I'm very open about being a sex worker, and I'm like, ask me questions as long as you're not like, what's your worst day ever? Like, I will answer anything, because like my pussy's on the internet. Like, what more could go wrong? Not wrong, but you know what I mean. Like,
what's the worst that can happen? Yeah.
And like, a lot of the time, people are like, but like, do you not find it empowering? And my first question is always like, do you find your job empowering? Like, you know, like it's that like the question of like, I don't know anyone else who gets asked that. And then when I'm like, so what is empowering to you? And they're like, I guess like an empowering job would be like a doctor or a nurse. And I'm like, I'm sure that's empowering to like help people's lives. I'm sure it's not empowering to have to use a food bank still.
Yeah.
Nurse is only empowering until you realize how many nurses have to put up with horrible patients. They've been punched in the face. They've been assaulted in their offices. They've had bodily emissions of every variety, and I do mean literally every variety thrown at them. I worked as a security guard in a hospital for a while, and I worked a couple of shifts, at least in the ER and the morgue and a couple other places. And oh my God, I was there literally to protect the nurses and the doctors from unhinged family and patients going through a really, really bad day. So yeah, I'll tell you right now, No, thank you.
And
No.
I think that's a huge part of it as well, is that every job has, like, even the people who are in jobs that they love, every job has parts that people don't like. You know, that's why it's a job. That's why you're getting paid to do it, because some of it's fucking boring. Like, that's part of it, you know? I think to move on to our next question, which is, why is other work not viewed through the lens of empowerment, which is sort of what we're naturally getting onto anyway, is no other job that I've ever had have I had to define it through a lens of empowerment. Like, no other job have I ever had to justify my deservingness of workers' rights by being like, because I love my job and it's so fun. Like, that's not why I need rights. That's not why I need better wages. That's not why I need paid time off. Like, none of those things are the reason why I need that, you know?
Yeah, and I think, like, I can only come at this from, like, an American perspective, obviously, like, culturally. But I think a huge part of that too is you have like extreme, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like evangelicalism in America, especially. And so there's this level of, like, even societally, I know so many people, myself included, even when I lived in Massachusetts, which was a very, like, liberal, progressive state, we still did that whole little, like, tape sticking to your arm and passed around and look how well it doesn't stick now, and like those types of things. And so people think that this sexual labor is separate from other labor, and so sexual labor has to be empowering because they view everything in this black and white, like, either it's empowering or it's disempowering, either it's empowering or it's, like, mortifying or humiliating. Or so people, like, clamor to try and say that it's empowering or it's not empowering because they don't view it as a spectrum. And I don't know how my autistic ass with black and white thinking is the one sitting here going, but there's nuance, but somehow I always am. And there's just, like, a lot of societal, cultural, like, everything involved in that because it's sexual labor and not bodily labor.
Well, and then there's that huge double standard, because they will tell women, femmes, AFABs, that, you know, you're worth it. Every time you touch somebody, oh, their dirty hands, takes away from you, takes away from you, takes away from you. Yeah. And yet, I have seen male sex workers who, their comment section is full of horny-ass women, tons of guys, and all, oh my god, you're so cool, you're so, oh my god, you're so confident, oh my god, do this. Right? Like all of them are heaping praise on these guys who are going and frequenting, you know, multiple women per week or multiple people per week, and, you know, living the lifestyle and whatnot, and, you know, doing the job. But heaven forbid I don't even physically touch anybody, but if I just happen to show off the same way they show off, oh my god, you snook, you whore, how dare you demean yourself? And I'm like, you are what? What? I'm a grown ass person. I can decide for myself. Go fuck yourself. But B, like, you're not holding that same energy for other people who are going out and using their body as their job and getting absolutely, you know, thrashed. Like, whether you're sleeping with people or, like, say, football stars, basketball stars, people who are in high contact sports, like boxing. We just saw Jake Paul get his jaw shattered.
It made my week.
3 places. 3 freaking places because a professional person who punches other people to wreck their body for their job stepped up and wrecked his body for their job. It's like, you're not caring about anybody else and how their body is affected, but you're worried about me getting paid for something that you wouldn't hold quite that same energy if I was doing it for free.
And the thing is, no one would say that was disempowering for him. No one would turn around and call boxing disempowering for him because he's a millionaire, so there's no perception that he could be disempowered by anything to an extent, you know? So there is so much of this that is, men can make these decisions and men can go into these brutal forms of labor where they're destroying their bodies every single day and coming home with long-term illnesses, if not, like, life-changing disabilities, and no one questions whether or not their labor is empowered. You know, no one questions whether or not they're capable of consenting to literally disabling themselves. It's just normal.
Yeah, and I would I would even say that under capitalism, no labor is empowering because money gives you the illusion of choice, but you still don't have like full choice. Unless you are literally like that top 1%, like the billionaires, maybe multimillionaires, if I'm being like really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. It is an outlier to be a sex worker that makes like 6 figures in a year. Like that is the outlier of sex workers. And so like, it's also an outlier to be a person, at least in America, that makes like mid 6 figures. So is any work empowering if we're not making the money to make our own choices? And then again, is this not a labor rights issue? And why is not sex labor not included in that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But also like
Formula One, like the flag girls. I can't remember if it was Formula One, but it was like the flag girls who like did the flags, and like these men die in these car crashes. They die. They are willingly like doing something where they are aware that the risk is death. But no, we have to save the women who got flown around the world, got most of the time off to spend with their kids because most of them were single mums. We ripped their fucking job out from underneath them when we forced them to go and work in like Sainsbury's and Walmart or back to their nurse job. And I found that really interesting, not just for the like, oh no, silly woman, like you don't know what you want, like we can't, like, you can't willingly like sexualize yourself or like dress in less clothing and wave a flag. Like we still have ring girls, do we not?
We still have the DCC here in America.
Yeah, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. Yeah.
But then like you think of like Formula One drivers die. Like race car drivers die, and no one is like, is this ethical? Is this empowering? But like a woman waving a flag, getting flown across the world, and spending maybe 3 months of the year working.
Yeah, it's this. It's like you say, it's
her silly little victim.
And like you say, it's the same as like the boxing and the ring girls. Like we're questioning whether or not being a ring girl is empowering, but the boxer is the one who's facing potential death. You know, I have a feeling one's worse than the other.
Well, it's funny too, because even when we do have somebody who tries to detransition, go back to a regular 9 to 5, if they find out that you've been in SW, that you've done online work or full service or whatever, you can lose your job so fucking quick. There was nurses during COVID who had, they weren't getting paid nearly enough. They were doing like a little bit of OF on the side. And also being a nurse during COVID, and they lost their jobs for having an OF page.
Yeah, teachers too.
Yeah,
teacher shortages.
Well, when I was a barista, I'm like, you're making like $9 an hour as a barista, and you're like, I was doing heavy, right, literally. And like I was doing lifting enough. I was, my back was hurting all the time. I was in pain. I was like not taking care of myself because I was doing, working this job that was like 2 hours away from full time. So they didn't have to pay me benefits. You're working all this, you're working shitty hours, you're working for shitty pay. And, you get that wonderful thing of like, harassment from customers. You have to deal with so many people. You have to basically be like a mental health professional in some ways as just a fucking barista. And then you go and like you're like, well, I'm gonna make a clip online and I'm gonna sell it for like $15 and people buy it. I'm sorry, I would much rather sell that clip that took me like 15 minutes to make, little while to edit, and then it's just like, why is that offensive? Why is that upsetting that I am doing all this labor myself? Like, I'm not asking someone else to do it for me. I do everything that I do is solo. I'm doing everything myself. I'm my own editor. I do my own marketing. I do my own filming. I record everything myself. I come up with everything myself. I do everything myself. And I charge whatever the fuck I want to charge for this stuff. I don't know of any other, like, areas where you can just fucking do that. And not say, I'm doing this because that's what I'm fucking doing. Like, even people who do, like, work for themselves, like, a lot of times you have to, like, explain why you're charging what you're charging. You have to, like, apologize that your rates are going up or whatever. Like, one of the things that like sex work has taught me is that like my fucking labor deserves money. If you want me to do anything for you, if you want me to fucking talk to you, you're gonna pay me for that. I'm not gonna fucking talk to you for free. Never in a million years would any other job give you that sort of like, that does feel fucking empowering. I'm sorry. Like, I mean, you know, and not to take anything away from like people who don't like doing it or don't want to do it or don't feel empowered by it. But me being like, yeah, if you want to say a single fucking thing to have to pay for it, that frees up my time because I'm getting paid no matter what someone else is saying or doing. So, like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't want to be a fucking barista when I can be at home getting paid to exist. You know?
Yeah.
Like a similar thing. I worked in the hospo industry, well, hospitality, if you're not Australian, that's what we just call it. So I worked as a barista, worked in fast food, worked in bars. And I'll tell you, that was the most humiliating and degrading thing ever. I was abused physically and, like, you know, I was abused and exploited by managerial staff. I had instances where I was physically and sexually assaulted by customers. It was hell. And I remember when I was working at Hungry Jack's, it was when I was 17 at the time, and my manager was making everyone basically change their contract to be casual employees, so they could not pay us benefits anymore. And if you were going to stay part-time, they were only going to roster you on the legally required hours, which is 8 hours a week. So once I had turned 18, 4 days after, I was working at the broth because I was like, fuck that, like, I'm not going to have that. But I'm saying that, though, I'm not going to be on TikTok, online, being like, we should abolish the hospitality industry. Yeah, I don't believe hospitality workers shouldn't have rights. It's with me. Yeah, I believe all workers and industries, everyone should not be exploited or abused, and that's why we should have good labour laws and workers' rights for everyone, no matter the industry.
In a server that I'm in for leftists in my state, I'm the only one who's out about being a sex worker, so you best believe I'm up in that adult industry chat every day talking about shit. But the other day I shared the article about the sin tax in my state, and I literally asked people, I was like, what would you do if the government proposed and passed an extra tax on your industry, and more than likely, rather than paying that tax, your employer left the state? Like, what would you do? Because between the fees we pay to platforms and the 30% that we already put aside for taxes, and then you add on another 10% because it's unclear whether workers are expected to pay this tax or just the sites, and then maybe an extra 10% because also the buyers have to pay the tax. And so if the site is going to pass it on, that's another, 20%. Like, that would be 80% of my income gone. Why am I, as a broke whore, paying more taxes than billionaires?
No, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, like, nobody... And granted, the people in that server were great, and, like, surprisingly, I have not once been, like, kicked out or told to shut up. Like, it's actually been a really, like, unique experience in leftist spaces for me. But, like, so many people were like, I actually have no idea what I would do if, like, my industry was suddenly, like, criminalized like that. And I'm like, yeah, don't you think you might go to more illegal forms of work? Don't you think you might do things that skirt the edge of the law to make up enough money to pay your rent?
I always try and use, like, nail techs as examples. Like what would you do if, like, as a nail tech, they just decided that, like, this is, like, promiscuous, like, this is, like, Satan stuff now, like, women putting things on their fingers is to tempt men, if they had some weird skin thing for that. And you said about nails, people were like, that's so fucking stupid and weird, but because it's sex and people are puritanical, like, obviously you had good reception, but most people are like,
yeah, no, the good reception I've gotten has been very out of the norm, to be fair. I'm in a really good little bunch, but yeah, and, like, that's the empowerment discussion too. Would you feel empowered if the government did that to your job?
Yeah.
Like, I bet you wouldn't. Do you feel empowered going and working as a union, like, electrician every day? Like, do you feel empowered, like, welding shit every day in, like, 90-degree fucking heat?
Yeah, I mean, like, my partner's a baker. He doesn't feel empowered. He just wants to bake bread and come home. Like all of us do. We want to do our jobs and come home or log off or you know, and we want to be able to do that, like, without having to explain to someone on the internet why we're doing that and why we deserve rights to do that. Like, it's almost like, you know, why we deserve rights to come home safely.
Right.
That's almost like what it is.
So apprenticeships in Australia, when you are a tradie, you get actually, so someone, I should say, a tradie is someone that works, like, I think Americans say blue-collar workers.
Yep.
So people that work in trade. We pay tradies in Australia, but we pay those people below minimum wage to learn a new skill, because that's like meant to be it. Oh, you learn a trade, so we get to pay you more. I would say that is inherently exploitative, and that's why we have a tradie shortage in Australia now, because those workers, they often experience a lot of hazing and a lot of like poor working conditions, and then they're not even paid enough to be able to survive on their own, unless they're maybe living at home or something. So I would say that's not very empowering, but you wouldn't ever hear about that.
A lot of times interns in America actually don't even get paid. There's only a couple of states that actually now force you to pay your interns. When I was getting one of my degrees for fashion design, I was made to do an internship class where I had to show up at a particular place and basically catalog fabrics and do whatever they told me to for like 4 hours a day, meeting a particular quota for the semester. And I never once got paid, not even for gas. And they had the ability to pay me for gas, but they decided not to. They had the ability to hire me as an actual employee because of how good I was doing, but they chose not to because all they wanted was the free labor.
Yeah.
And then to send me on my way at the end of it. So yeah, it's only a few states now that finally changed those laws much more recently, where you have to pay them something, but it is still not nearly enough for them to live on. So yeah.
Like, I live in a state where we're still at the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. And then because of that, technically, actually, my state's minimum wage is $0. The only reason we have a minimum wage in my state is because there's a federal minimum wage. If there wasn't, the minimum wage in my state would be $0. And then a company will come along and pay you $10 an hour and act like you should be grateful because it's not the minimum wage. And I'm like, damn, like, I make more than this on some of my worst nights on cam.
Yeah.
I think,
and it's wild to me how like you can think like whether you consider this job to be empowering or not is sort of irrelevant to someone needing rights and protections. No matter what job they're doing, no matter whether or not it's empowering, it's so insulting to imply or to think to feel that someone does not deserve protections because you personally don't feel their job is empowering. Like that's violence. Like that's violence. Yeah. It can't really be explained any other way. Like there's no reason for you to, as an individual, to think that I deserve something horrible to happen to me or that it will happen to me and there's no way around it simply because I've chosen to do a job that's easier for me being disabled and having like I have like, I got brain stuff, I got body stuff, it's all fucked, like, but this job, I can do it and be a little crazy and have issues. I can do it, and it lets me take days off when I need to. It lets me work on the days that I can, and it lets me have easier days. It lets me do whatever I need to do. And I know that that's lucky. I know that not everybody gets that, and I don't want to dismiss that as like everybody experiences that. I know that that is a privilege in itself, but like I deserve protections, but so does that person that right now is outside in 17 degrees Fahrenheit trying to have like do full service work even though it's illegal. They deserve to be fully protected. It doesn't matter if they feel empowered in what they're doing or fucking not. They deserve safety above everything else. And the fact that like an empowerment conversation would ever imply that someone doesn't deserve safety or protections, it's baffling to me. Really sickening.
To be honest as well, I would almost argue that the less empowering a job is perceived to be, the more workers' rights that those people need. Like, if you're perceiving a job as a place where workers have no autonomy, no rights, no say in anything, that they're being exploited and treated horribly, then that's exactly the sort of workplace that you need to better protect the workers in. Like, it makes no sense to me to be like, this workplace is so evil and so exploitative, so let's make it worse, you know? It's...
Yeah. Right. For real.
Alright, so next question is, does sex work need to be empowering?
No. No.
We're all in
No,
agreement.
I didn't feel empowered when I was washing shit off of dogs' arses. When I was doing dog grooming, I didn't feel empowered when I had to explain to owners that, like, shouting at a dog is like shouting at a 3-year-old child. It doesn't know what you mean. It just knows you're being loud and scary. It wasn't empowering when I would bend over to the bottom shelf to grab a Red Bull for a vodka Red Bull and Sam Loud to go, "Oh, nice fat ass." And it wasn't empowering when I had to wipe old people's asses in a care home. And I don't feel that this job has to be empowering either.
Right.
I don't feel that any job needs to be empowering, because a job is like to pay your wages. Like, there are some people out there that are incredibly privileged to do a job they love and show up every day and be like, this is the best fucking day of my life, I'm doing what I love. And they're usually people like zoologists and marine biologists and people at the top of their field, and not just like
Not working
worker.
class. Yeah, not the working class.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, sorry. That was it.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say, I think too, like, I actually loved being a barista. If I was not physically disabled and, like, having to stand for shifts didn't bother me, and it paid a living wage, like, I might go back to being a barista. I fucking loved it. I loved talking to new people all the time and having regulars, and I just love coffee. I am a slut for coffee. So, like...
I miss having access to, like, commercial grade espresso maker. That's about it.
But, like...
I got an AeroPress for Christmas and I've gone mad on it. I don't know how I'm not vibrating every day.
But
Even
if that job did pay my bills, I don't know that I would call it empowering, but I would have loved doing it in the same way that I love being a whore. Like, I don't know. So I don't think we talk about any other work through the lens of empowerment outside of, like, paying bills. And even that creates, like, a hierarchy that is very similar to the hierarchy with jobs, that, like, lawyers are more respected than janitors. But, like, I know a lot of people who fucking love cleaning and would love to be a janitor that pays the bills. Like, so if we had all the worker protections we need and everybody made a living wage, I actually think most people would actually go after a job that they would feel empowered doing, because they could pay their bills doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like had UBI or something.
Yeah.
And people could then go out and choose, oh, I want, like, you know, I want to do this. Like, I know that if I didn't have to worry about my bills, I would love to go and study, like, psychology, because it's my special interest, and then do something to do with kink and sex work. But at the moment, I can't afford to go to university. I don't have time to go to university. The industry of the UK is fucking shambles at the moment, so I can't afford to take time off to even write up something for an hour, let alone, you know, like, do what I actually want. And I think, like, a lot of jobs aren't empowering because of poverty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, someone who likes cleaning might decide to do cleaning, but when they've done cleaning for 2 years and they've seen everything, they're like, oh my god, I fucking hate this now. It's why I tell people that I love to try, unless, like, they actually really want to not make hobbies into jobs. Because you all hate painting when you have sold 34 paintings that you didn't want to paint.
Yep.
You know?
I find it funny that, you know, I've done so many different jobs: security, tutor, dietary aid, elder care, all kinds of different stuff. And even though this SW has been the fucking hardest job that I have ever had, I would still choose this again and again and again. It fits my proclivities. It gets me what I want, what I need. It helps me express myself and be far more productive. I want to become a professional dom. And I want to do that for, like, the next 30 years, quite literally. Because not only is it a part of me, but it is the best use of a lot of my skills, including my psych degree. So yeah, like to me, this job would be empowering, or at least far more empowering, if people would just literally shut the fuck up and leave us the fuck alone. And that's my biggest thing. And it's like, I'm a woman in, sorry, I just did that to myself. I'm gender fluid. I'm a person in their mid 40s. I have survived an evangelical church that I was at for 20 years. I have done so much baggage unpacking, so much healing, so much analyzation of like everything that I think, the way I do, my biases and whatnot. And I look at everything and I go, yeah, no, this is the job that suits me. This is the job that fits my personality, my proclivities, what I want to do, and how I can actually be most helpful in society, not just on the erotic side, but also on the catharsis, giving people a neutral, non-toxic space to explore themselves in, and for them to go, okay, I really like that. I think I can do that again, elsewhere. Thank you so much. Or, oh yeah, no, that was definitely not for me. Okay, don't worry, we're going to get you a juice box and a blanket, and you can sit down and think about your decisions for a little bit. We'll come back, and don't worry, you're fine. It's like, this job doesn't need to be empowering, but it could be far more empowering if the stigma around it and the Budinsky's would just...
Yeah.
Like, with the question, does sex work have to be empowering? I would say, is any job really empowering when we're all under capitalism and the threat of losing our home, not being able to feed ourselves, support our families? Are we ever truly able to have that choice and agency when that threat is always looming over? And also, I feel like the demonization of our clientele, because not all our clients are these awful, disgusting pigs. Like, the most clients I ever had, and were normal, your regular guys, and they weren't always just after a quick route. Like, some people just wanted to have someone to talk to, or I've had some bookings where it's been like a guy has said, like, can I just ask you for advice? And like they would want me to talk to them.
Tarot readings on screen, mate. Like, it's not always sexual, and they make out like they're horrible predators,
Right.
and they're just dudes. A lot of them. Yeah, there are horrible predators, but most of them are just dudes.
Yeah. And like Bethany was saying, a lot of people want to like have a safe space where they can try out something new. Like, I remember having a lot of clients that wanted to try out different kinks and fantasies, and they just wanted to have someone that they felt safe enough to open up. And I would always have my rule with the client that it's a mutual respect, and consent is a two-way street, let's all have a good time. And I had very great experiences because I would assure them that, that their privacy and dignity and their consent is just as valued as, I would always say, I treat you how I would want to be treated. And, I would be able to build that rapport with them, and then that's how I would kind of screen any, red flags by the conversation. But yeah, a lot of them would have that sense of ease because, you have to remember this is a very sensitive, very vulnerable experience for someone to approach a working person and, have to, say, hey, this is what I'm after, and actually have to, talk about something very intimate and personal to them. And yeah, the demonization is crazy, and like the Nordic model criminalizing them, criminalizing actual adults for purchasing, consenting adult services is just insanity to me. And then the idea that, my partner could have been charged for trafficking because, I asked him to take a picture of me naked and I sell it on my site. Oh, that means I'm being exploited. If we film ourselves, doing the do and I put it on my site, that's apparently I'm being trafficked. And the Swedish word is a hallick, means like a pimp. So he could be charged for that. And that is, to me, crazy because you would think in puritanical wise, two partners living together, like that would be considered like, not sinful, but still that's like crazy. The Nordic model, he could be considered a hallick.
Next question. In what ways is sex work empowering?
I'm my own boss.
Yeah. Yeah. I get to pick.
Set my own hours.
Yeah.
My own rates.
Yep.
Who I see. So someone else just chime in if you want like no one's fucking telling me what to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I mean, even just like being able to block someone if they're annoying, like
the way I
just
talk to some of these men.
Yeah, like people, and sometimes they don't even realize that that's something, you know, they'll be like, oh, you know, like if you don't want to deal with me, then, you know, you're gonna lose money. And it's like, no, I won't. Bye. Like, I don't give a shit, you know, like being able to just block someone, like tell someone that you don't give a shit, like they're like in ways like when you're a barista or when you do any sort of like service job. I worked in a bank for a while. You have to kiss ass so fucking much, and it's terrible. And I have like resting bitch face constantly, so it's like you know, I was always like getting the talking to, like people are, you know, can tell that you're not happy, you know. And I'd be like, okay, well, I can't really help this, but like as a dom, like this face does me well. Being a bitch is great. But like you have to be so nice, and you have to kiss ass, and you have to be like, oh, you're complaining and you're being really horrible and you're saying really horrible things and you're throwing things at me and you're, you know, here's your meal for free, or like, here, we'll give you like all this shit. And it's like in sex work that doesn't happen. I mean, yeah, I know that it happens in like terrible situations. I'm not speaking on that, but like you don't have to see somebody if they fucking suck. You can block them. You can say no. You can say, here are my rates. Here's what this costs. If you don't want to pay that, go to somebody with different rates. And it's that simple. And I think that's something that people don't quite understand about sex work, is that it's like, you do have those choices. Not everybody has those choices all of the time, but those choices do exist within sex work. And those are, when you are able to make those choices, I think that's when it can be more empowering. And honestly, like, I have more confidence as a sex worker than I've ever had. Like, I'm 40 and I am a sex worker, and I feel the best about my body. I feel the best about myself, everything. And it, like, what other kind of, like, no other job is you're gonna be in your 40s being like, yeah, I'm fucking hot and I can do this shit. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think empowering because I feel hot.
In a really similar vein, I find it super empowering that I get paid because I'm fat, not in spite of being fat. Because I gotta tell you, for the longest time on social media, I was always like, the best angle to hide a roll, and let me take a photo from up here so my double chin doesn't show, and I'm not even attracted to men, so like truly it doesn't bother. Like I said, my literal tagline is mean lesbian fat bitch. That's my tagline for shit. So like, but it's so empowering to have like people literally worshiping my body for exactly how it looks, disabilities and all, mental illnesses and all, every single role, every single cellulite, all of it. And I find that really empowering, because I like am the exact opposite of the beauty standard, and I have been for a very long time, because I was never the right type of fat. I don't have the right curves. I have too much of a stomach, all of those things. But also, like, I don't know, the ability to like make money while curled up with my partner and like our cat on the bed and like our dog on the bed, empowering. The ability to like go on cam and play the video games I want on joystick or whatever, and like get paid because I have a vibrator in my underwear while I'm like playing my new favorite video game that I just bought that I bought with the subs money, and now I'm being paid to play it just because I got some cleavage out. Like, that's empowering to me.
Yeah. I find it to me it's empowering when I get neurodivergent, specifically autistic clients, whether that's because they've seen that I'm like diagnosed as autistic or anything like that. That makes me feel empowered, because I know that this person has come to me most likely because they've seen something or looked at me, because like, you know, mental illness is never type, but I'm covered in tattoos, I've got a septum piercing, you know, they have the septum ring theory thing, and then people come to me and I get to give a lot of people their first experience because they can see something in me that they maybe can't see in like another sex worker that's neurotypical or isn't open about like being being autistic. And I find that really empowering, that I can help like my community as well. When I get anyone who's like gender non-conforming or not straight come to me and talk about these things, I'm like, that's empowering to me, that I get to help someone maybe feel more confident in their sexuality or their gender or their gender expression. I love that, and I love the community that comes from this, not with like clients or anything like that, but the community that comes with other workers, because I think it's really, really empowering to actually know that you are standing up for what is best for marginalised communities, what is best for women, what will actually decrease violence against women and girls. Even though people are sat there just being like, you're just a whore, you're like, you're a liar, you're a submissive of the patriarchy, you harm women. I think it's really empowering to sit there with the knowledge that I have, which is that like everything that I'm talking about and everything that we're talking about is evidence-based. And that like it's empowering to me to know that I'm smarter than you and I'm not stuck in my fucking cognitive dissonance. That's empowering. Empowering to have a community that's filled with that as well, because all the people I speak to that are sex workers are 98% of them are highly intelligent, really switched on, politically informed, left-wing people that will be at the front lines of every fucking protest, able-bodied or not. And I find that empowering, that I'm part of this strong group of people that are purposely ostracised, that are the canaries in the coal mine, that have all this stuff, and we're still going, and we're still looking hot doing it, and we're still fighting back against censorship and fascism and all this fucked up stuff. I find that empowering. I find it really empowering to know that I'm on the right side of fucking history and the right side of feminism. And I'm a bunch of cool people.
I stepped away from sex work for like a couple years, and I'm gonna be honest, the reason why I came back were like two main reasons. One, because I missed getting sales notifications. That is a dopamine hit like nothing else. I love it. And two, because I feel most politically aware and most like politically heard and informed when I'm in community with sex workers. And I was like, I miss having that sort of like, I felt like I'm never as keyed in as when I am doing sex work, because it makes me more aware of my surroundings and more aware of the people who are in this industry as well, no matter what type of work they're doing. And so like, to me, truly, I chose this job because I feel like it's for me, doing this job isn't just about, oh, I like getting paid doing it. I feel like part of my job is to be an activist for other sex workers. I feel like it's a political statement to be a sex worker in a fascist state. And I choose this because I care about each and every one of you. I care about the people who are doing this. I care about full service sex workers. I care about people who are trying their best to get out of it. I care so fucking much. And this job lets me do that. And I think in that way, this job is empowering, because I can speak up for people who have less privilege than I do. Not that I have a ton of it, but I have some of it. And I'm going to use that whenever I fucking can. That is empowering, because this job encourages that. Like no other job, absolutely. I feel.
I think
and like I had a...
Go on.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
What I find empowering, like, with this job is the fact that as a disabled person, I've had many jobs that I've been let go of because I spend a lot of time in hospital. I'm always in doctors, or I've had long stays, or I will be a bit flaky. I remember one job, I had an epileptic seizure and I couldn't obviously come in. I was hospitalized, and because I called them, no one thought to call my work at Hungry Jack's to let them know I'm not coming in. If someone's having a epileptic fit, that's not the first thing you think of. So when I was like conscious enough, being like, oh, I should let management know, they got mad at me and gave me a written warning and was like, well, you should have planned your epileptic seizure when you weren't working. And I'm like, but like, with
you should have planned it in advance.
And like ensure that I'm able to attend all my appointments, work when I'm feeling good. I can keep out the epilepsy triggers, for example, and like make a safe environment for myself. Where a lot of disabled people I know join this industry because there's a lot of barriers for us to just get I don't want to say normal job, but for the sake of people to understand, a regular job. I don't know the best way to put it, but
I say civilian, but then the civilians cry about that because it's only the police and the army.
a 9 to 5.
Yeah, or a traditional job. Yeah, traditional work.
Like epileptic and immediately like, oh, they're gonna like just throw it in the bin. Like if you're a disabled person, it's very hard to just get a 9 to 5. A lot of us, I think, you know, no matter what disability it is, I think it's like empowering to know that we have agency and control and being able to manage ourselves better because we're not being forced or having to deal with discrimination. Because I found that working 9 to 5s, the amount of ableism I would encounter, like that was just like the little iceberg. The amount of times that I would get in trouble just because I was disabled and needed accommodations, it was crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the parts of being your own boss, right, is that you make your own accommodations. So as disabled people, we're able to really alter our workplace, not even just in general, but like day to day as well, based on our specific symptoms and how we're feeling and how tired we are and all of those things. And you can say, okay, you know what, actually today I'm not feeling up to doing anything, and that's okay. There's no one like leaning down your neck about it and being like, no, you've got to come in at 6, you know, like you can really just accommodate your needs.
You've got a job no matter what happens, basically. That's how I view it. I think that's empowering me, that I'm never going to lose my job. I might lose my platform, I might lose a client, I might lose my banking, I might lose my house, but I will always have my job because it's mine and no one can take it from me, even if you criminalise it, you know? Like, that's it, is knowing that, like, I could take 6 months off because I'm horribly ill, or I've had a car crash, or someone I love deeply's died and my BPD has just gone, you can't have sex with people, ha! I still have a job to come back to. I still have a platform that's waiting there for me. I still have people that will come back and pay me, you know? Like, and like fluctuating in body size as well, like with like people like that aren't like as able-bodied. I know that like my friend, when they're having like chronic flare-ups, they tend to put on weight because they can't be as active. This job allows for you to, like, you know, you might not have that customer that you were when you were that way, but there's another person out there that wants to see you at this way, or at this way, or at this way, or at this way. There's a room for everyone in this industry, no matter what you look like, no matter who you are. And that's a very comforting thing, is that, like, you know, that there are very few things that could mean you don't have this job, and to not have this job anymore, you'd have had to have done something quite bad, because we know lots of people that have done bad things and still continue in this line of work. So that there's no one to turn around and go, you're not a sex worker anymore. That's your decision.
Yeah, and I can say I had to take almost all of 2025 off. I've been in and out of this industry for 10 years now, like literally since I was 18, and I turned 28 in March. And I had to take almost all of 2025 off between having to go off my migraine meds and then drop out of college because of it, because I average without medication 25 to 30 migraines a month. I still average like 2 a week with my meds, but it's so much better. Oh my God. But like between that and then like, we were going to do van life and that didn't work out. So then we ended up homeless for a little bit. And like, it was like just a ton of different things that happened in 2025. And all I had to do was like, I tried to like tweet and post on Blue Sky once a day. So like my socials stayed active, but like, I didn't make any new content. I didn't cam. And like, guess what? I'm getting back into it and I'm starting to film content and cam again. And yeah, it's a little bit of work to rebuild that like clientele, to rebuild the people like coming to my cam room and whatever. But like, all my accounts are still there. Like, I don't know a single job where I could have taken a year off, except maybe academia, but like even that's a little hit or miss, you know?
Yeah, and to still have your job waiting for you exactly as it was beforehand. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. To be a little different, I find this job empowering because it very much helps me be myself. I like to hold space with people and have interesting conversations and explore things like fetish and sexuality and that kind of stuff. And I have been able to meet more and more clients and people who just want a space where they can actually explore some of that. A lot of them have just been like, I'm sorry I'm not like huge. And I'm like, oh honey, you're average, and that's totally fine. In fact, a lot of women actually do prefer that. They're like, wait, really? I'm like, yeah, what have you been told all your... Well, I was told if I was, like 8 inches, 9 inches, 10 inches. I'm like, No, thank you.
With more bread.
Right, like you have
Little
to
thing size cream.
it's got to be like Subway. It's got to be like a foot long. Like no, no. Your 6 inches is very, very average. It's very, very normal. In fact, a lot of people are like that. You are perfectly normal. You are perfectly average, and there's no shame to that. And they're like, really? But I also kind of like guys. Is that I'm like, again, this is not a problem. You just happen to be bisexual. They're like, yeah, but I don't always like guys, like something. So I've been in conversations with people who didn't realize they were bisexual, or they didn't realize that they were gender fluid, or they didn't realize that they were abrosexual, or so many different forms of queer. And they're just like, oh my God, you're the first person I've been able to talk about this with, and you've actually given me some things to think about and actual words to express myself, and like avenues to like find out more about myself. I'm like, yay. And they're like, thank you. I'm like, wait, did I just get thanked for my services? This doesn't happen in like retail jobs. This doesn't happen in my waitressing job, but it's happening when I'm an SW. I'm like, I'm okay with this. I'm very okay with this.
I think there's something interesting to that as well, because a lot of the outside perception of sex work is that it reinforces harmful gender roles and traditional gender roles, and that it's a patriarchal industry and all of these things, right? And I think on a like a mainstream porn level, maybe you can make that assessment, but on like a one-to-one individual interaction with a client, like you say, quite often what we're doing is actually sort of unpacking gender expectations around sex and understanding how people's individual like psychologies and minds work in relation to what they're looking for and what they like and who they are, you know. And I think a lot of that work is done by sex workers, especially when it comes to cis-het men.
Yeah, I think I know a lot of workers that went in just escorting and very quickly realised that there was money to be made in offering dom services as well, because I would say that in, you know, obviously I offer fetish, I offer domination, but I have friends that like just started off like just doing escorting, and by, you know, at least a year in, they all had, you know, they all had knee-high PVC boots and a whip, and, you know, and they started looking into domination, because I do honestly think that a larger portion of men and clients, or should we say clients, are coming for services that are focused around kink, because they can't ask their wives or their girlfriends or the people that they're talking to on dating apps to do it. My whole thing is like, until Osa came in, I was Luna the slut. I don't do GFE, I don't do kissing, I won't go on a date with you, I don't want to cuddle you. I will dominate you, or you can fuck me like I'm your little porn star. And I would still get men come in and want to talk about like emotional things with me, or, you know, like talk, like, you know, sit down and talk about gender and sexuality and all these things. And like, I definitely see more, you know, like for all this, the talk that radical feminists and people who are anti-porn want to have about, they just want to use you like an object. They've got an option to essentially use me as close to as an object, and I would allow them in like the porn star experience. And most of them want pegged or tied up or dressed up in, you know, like dresses and makeup, or they want to talk about sucking dick or eating cum or being gangbanged. Because the large majority of people coming to these sex workers, I think, are people that feel shame having, like, I had a guy like today, and he has had a foot fetish for as long as he can remember. He speaks about his foot fetish with his friends, but he's never paid an escort for a foot job. And today I gave him his first foot job, and he's seen many escorts before me because of a shame thing, you know. And that it shows me that so many men, like men who come in and go, do you get many gay men? Because I do pegging. And I'm like, no. And then the next time they're like, can you put a finger up my bum? I think we undo a lot more, like you're saying, than we reinforce, because I think a lot more people come to be dominated than come to dominate people. And most people want vanilla sex as opposed to like PSE sex, because even though I don't offer vanilla option, you know, on my website, I still get people asking for it. And like, of course I can do that, but I think a lot of it is people that are maybe not trying to unpack the patriarchy in the same ways that like women and feminists are, but are still trying to undo what has done to them. I think bum means I'm gay. Yeah, but like that's a woman with tits, and you know, like
No, and I get
it's really not gay because it's a woman. And then, you know, and then it leads into all the other things about like, being non-binary or being trans, and then like
being more
get, so
accepting,
I agree with you there.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I get a really similar, it's actually really funny, a lot of the findoms that I would like to consider friends. My spouse actually has a whole PowerPoint about asexuality that they updated, and I've sent it out to all of my findom friends, and the amount of my findom friends who have turned around and been like, oh, I think I'm ace. Like, because I was open about being ace and a lesbian and a sex worker and, you know, all those things. And so then I send it to people, and then they're like, they turn around and they message me, and they're like, that was actually really helpful, thanks. And I've done it to a couple of clients too.
Yeah.
Just because I personally think that like findom and like aceness kind of intersect in a lot of different ways. But like,
Yeah.
also being like a lesbian dom, like all of my clients are still mostly men. You know what I mean? But like, there is something freeing even for my clients in knowing that no matter what they do, I'm not going to be attracted to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so like, they can ask for the weird things because it doesn't matter if it turns me off. Your money is what's turning me on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and like that's very freeing for a lot of guys because they don't have to like put on this air of very specific type of masculinity to try and be attractive to me back because it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
I'm not attracted.
Yeah.
And that's freeing for a lot of guys. And I find that empowering too. You know what I mean? That like I said, my whole tagline is being lesbian fat bitch, but I don't actually hate men. You know what I mean? And it's empowering for me to help guide men who want to be better men into being able to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think with oh yeah. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the misgivings when it comes to sex work is that it's always sex. And when it comes to sex work, it's not always sex. Sometimes it's a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes it's a sounding board to talk to so you can go through some of your own stuff. Sometimes it's just giving up control, letting somebody else make the decisions for a while. It is not always, ooh, I want to put this thing and this thing and No, it's like there's so much more to it, and it doesn't always have to be sex. We just get put into, you know, the umbrella of sex worker, which I won't give up that goddamn title for damn nothing.
I know, yeah.
Forever, like,
I fought hard to be a whore. I'm going to stay being a whore.
Right? I fought hard for this position.
Well, that's something that I think is, I'm really glad that it's something that you all brought up because it is something that I think sex work feels empowering for me in that way, and that people can come to me, they wouldn't because of patriarchy. Like, that's the thing. Like, as much as, you know, sex workers uphold patriarchy, as much as that lie is told, the reason why they, like, clients and men can come to us and talk to us is because patriarchy is harming them, and we're the only people that they have to listen. Like, porn is where most men discover any fetishes that they have, any sexual interests that they have. And because of this stigma of watching porn and how it's bad and you shouldn't do it, and if you're in a relationship, you know, blah, 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 blah. But, like, sometimes the porn they're watching is femdom porn. Sometimes the things that they're watching are gay porn. Sometimes what they want is to not have sex. Like, the amount of people who, like, love chastity, who are, you know, who love being told they're not allowed to have you're not allowed to have sex, who love being told that I would never fuck you, and they're like, more, you know, like, this isn't not sex work just because I'm not fucking someone. I'm doing something that's allowing someone to explore their fetish. And truly, the amount of people, like, it's not like a crazy amount, like hundreds or something, but multiple people have said to me, because of the videos that I make specifically on the topic of feminization, who have come to me and literally told me that I brought them to tears with how I talk about it, because they've never felt seen before in talking about feminization, because I have a very strict boundary that feminization is not humiliating. Being a woman is not humiliating. If you want to engage in that kind of content, you can go elsewhere. We do not fuck around with that shit here. It doesn't matter if you're trans or if you're exploring. Feminization is a beautiful thing, and I want to give you a space to explore that. And the amount of people that are like, I cried because no one's ever said that to me before. I've never heard those words before. And think about that. Like, they're being empowered through my sex work. Like,
Yeah.
that's a big fucking deal. And the fact that, like, a lot of people won't even see sex work outside the lens of, like, heterosexual violence is really, really alarming. That, like, sex in, like, the like, demonization of sex work is the demonization of heterosexual men. And, like, so many people that talk to me, that engage with me, are not cis heterosexual straight men. Like, that's just not it. Just because they're engaging with me, someone who you perceive as a woman, does not mean that they're all just cis het straight men engaging with me in a cis het straight way. Like, they're doing a lot of weird shit, which I'm here for and I enjoy.
Oh yeah, I've been called and I've been told that I'm not a real lesbian because I do sex work, that I'm an affront to the lesbian community, that I'm the reason why men think they can turn lesbian straight. Tons of things because of that. And then I'm just sitting here like, I don't know, it's the same thing when, like, straight guys go into sex work, and I'm like, you have to be comfortable with the fact that most of the people buying your solo content are gay men, whether or not you're attracted to them. Like, I just have to be okay with the fact that most of the people, not all, but most, are probably, like, straight men, or, like, bi men who are attracted to women, or women presenting people. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but oh my god, the way people are so weird. And then they turn around and they're like, all porn and all sex work is just catered to cis het white men. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. If you're that clueless, I actually feel like you maybe need to go back to kindergarten. Like, that's all I can tell you.
Search history ever, just missionary vanilla, lights off, you know, like it's like
Jesus is watching.
Jesus over there in the cup chair.
Just to, like, add on from that, like, I have clients that are, like, purely getting sensory needs met. So I have a client that he is soft the entire time, and I torture his nipples, I hit him, I don't go anywhere near his junk, and then I sit on his face, fully clothed, and I see how long he can hold his breath. And, like, that obviously there are ways in which that is sexual. I'm sure he goes home and thinks about it. But at the time, that's just an autistic man getting his sensory needs met. I'm not having sex with him. But in the same vein of that as well, we talk about sex, and everyone thinks about sex as P in V. Sex is penetration.
Yep.
You know, and I've had to explain this to, like, you know, people that aren't sex workers and aren't clients, that, like, sex is anything in the term of, like, you know, that could turn someone on. You could tie me up, sit there in a chair, and you've got a vibrator strapped to my leg. That's still us having, like, you know, sex in a sense, because sex isn't just P and V, and it's again like the heteronormative, like, this is sex, when, like, sex can be like, you know, I've come months from just purely psychological, and then, like, one little flick, and I'm like, and that, you know, that there was no penetration going on there was no actual sex. My brain was being fucked. It was wonderful. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when people think about sex work, and they think about fucking, and that's honestly so little what sex work is. Because we have, like, people going out on dates, we have, like, paid cuddlers, we have, you know, people who will just sit and talk to you on a cam call because you've had a tough day. None of that is, like, sex, but it still falls under sex work. And yeah, that's,
like, one of the ways the job isn't empowering is I know in Australia we have maternity leave and all that stuff, but I know a lot of countries, they don't have that. So if you're a pregnant person, you know that you're not going to face discrimination and stuff, you can still work this industry and it's fine. And I know that most clients, in my experience, like, when you make that kind of content, a lot of them aren't wanting anything like, you know, penetrative or anything. They just want to, like, watch you stroke your stomach, or, like, pretend, you know, do a role play where you've cheated on them and it's another man's baby. Like, that was a common one I had. Or they just want to watch you eat food. Like, quite literally. So I just get to sit around all day and just eat all day. Like, all right, I can do that.
I love making content where I'm just, like, eating sushi. It's my favorite content.
See, I ready to do a match. Yeah.
And I think in a way that's part of what's quite empowering about the industry as well, is how much variety there is and how much room there is for you to find your niche and your thing that you like and that, you know, you become known for. That's like, you know, that you get to actually, there's so much variety that 9 times out of 10 you do get to choose something that you enjoy, because there's enough out there that there's going to be multiple things that you like, and you can pick one of them that's going to be profitable and, you know, make that your niche and your thing. And like it's not like there's this rigid structure that you have to fit into one or these categories. Like you can sort of make your own category almost and do your own thing, and there's a lot of room for you to like be your own person. And I think Inna was saying that earlier, like there's a lot of room for self-determination and like self-expression, you know. The next question is, in what ways is sex work disempowering?
The stigma.
Red films.
Yeah.
Having to argue about the right to exist and right to have basic worker protection, like the fatigue, because you always have to be switched on and be ready to debate why your existence is valid and why your industry is valid, why we, you know, deserve to not be murdered on the streets essentially just for doing our job. And that to me, like, I can't always be fighting people all the time, and it's just like, shut the fuck up, mate. I do not care. Like, honestly, it's that's the hardest part, having to deal with, like, the stigma, having to be always switched on, or else then it's like, oh, look, it's an uneducated, you know, poor victim, or just like, oh, you couldn't do anything else, so that's why you do this industry, because people can't comprehend the idea of maybe I did this industry because I was like, you know, if I'm getting fucked by capitalism, I may as well be paid well enough for it, you know?
Yeah, and I think...
I would say the shame that we are, like, supposed to feel. Like, I don't feel shame doing my job, but the shame that society puts on me and the like, dehumanization because of that shame, the, like, no human involved sort of shit. You know, the dehumanization that, like, I know it's something small, but, like, deplatforming. It is, like, quite dehumanizing to lose all your memories, all your, like, accolades, that photo shoot that you don't have pictures from anymore, you know, that worker that's no longer here, that you now, like, you don't have that picture that was on your Instagram, the, like, sense of, like, the sense of self you have to put into your Instagrams and your social media for it to be your portfolio, only for that to be, like, snatched away for, like, a lot of the time seemingly no reason. Like, you know, I feel like that's disempowering, because it's also like it's supposed to disenfranchise us even further, to just be like, well, like, fuck's sake, what's the point in this? And a lot of the time we are punished for, like, speaking out and correcting misinformation. So if I want to, you know, stitch a radical feminist video and talk about how, you know, like, this person is wrong and my tone isn't perfect, and I'm not sat there trying to be like, so I can understand where I can understand why you feel like it's okay to do harm to my community. If I'm to raise my voice, if I'm to swear, if I'm to, like, say, you know, like, sex work or human trafficking, to try and, like, talk about the differences, that video is, like, suppressed or taken down. So it feels like you're fighting a losing battle a lot of the time, and I think that's very fucking disempowering. To feel like, you know, I don't mind having to be a cockroach, but, like, it's really fucking tiring having to just be like, and I will survive, and, you know, it's another thing, it's like not empowering to have to worry about, like, having your bank taken away for potentially speaking to a client in a certain way, you know, or, you know, just things like that, like worrying about your housing. Like, oh, can I film this video here, because will a radical feminist, like, see near where my house is and find out where my house is and post me on the internet, or will they go to my estate agents? And obviously, like, you know, like, all those kind of things, the threat of violence and the shame we're supposed to feel and how we're treated just consistently, I find disenfranchising and dehumanizing, because, like, I'm a person and I do deserve to come home safe, and I'm someone's kid, I'm someone's partner, I'm someone's friend, and being treated like I'm less than, or just a silly whore, or, like, one less, like, you know, burden on society, or, like, I'm just mentally ill. Yeah, because I do this or something. None of that feels empowering at all.
Well, and so many of them get pissed off when you aren't ashamed. And I'm a little bit special in this particular regard because I am a black person in America, and I'm queer. I'm a bunch of different other things, but I am very first and foremost a person of color / black. So I've been in several comment sections where y'all are, you're going in and you're fighting the fight, and then they start dismissing you because you're white, so you must have privilege. And then I step in and I go, hey, black person in America in their 40s who is queer. Like, I will list off every single minority that I belong to. And I'm like, here's my take on the whole thing. And I've only been in for 2 years, so I still have very much a civilian background. So what do you have to say to that? And they'll keep talking to y'all. They will ignore me flat out and refuse to touch my comments or statements because they know how fucking wrong they are and how hard that they would have to defend against a person who bunks their entire statement. And it is so fucking dehumanizing at times to be just absolutely, utterly ignored while they will continue a conversation with you, a back and forth with you. They will go to all of your... Yeah, it's like they will go to all of your videos. They'll keep commenting and going and going and going. But if I make a statement, I am completely ignored. And it's like, because I literally fly in the face of your commentary and your comment would disintegrate with any critical thought, you're just going to ignore me as if I am not a person, I do not exist, and I have no voice. Like, what the fuck?
It's a difficult one as well, isn't it? Because so often in those situations, they will specifically say that they're not listening to us because they want to listen to people of colour, right? And that people of colour's voices are more important and should be at the forefront. And then, like you say, when a person of colour who is a sex worker comes in and agrees with us over them, they will ignore it. And like you say, they'll continue arguing with us, partly because I think they can continue using these lines of privileged, of empowerment, of liberal feminism, all of these things that they like to throw to sort of devalue our arguments, and they can't do that to you, so they just don't engage. And it's
I always find that they are either like the Hello Kitty profile pictures or they're white. I very, very rarely see people of colour, like that are radical feminists, in the comment sections. It's always other white women going, white woman.
Trust me, you do not want to be in the black spaces that hate us, because it is a whole new level of toxic. It is a different level of toxic, and I can see it for what it is, which is a lot of black people have not unpacked a lot of their organized religious trauma, a lot of the social expectations that were put on us for literally hundreds of years. Oh, you're black, you must be lascivious, you must be promiscuous, you must be, doing all this, that, and the third. And the way they combat is, oh, no, we're the good ones. We don't do those things. We have, loving, cis-het, normative relationships. And it's just like, oh my God, bitch, unpack some of this shit. Do you realize that we could be so much further ahead if we weren't constantly playing the Christian conservative supremacy game and trying to keep up with that bullshit? Like, what the fuck? So yeah, I'm actually glad some of y'all have not seen black videos focused around how much they hate WHORES.
Yeah.
Because it is a whole new and different level of toxic. And for the most part, y'all would not be able to get into those conversations because they'd automatically go, oh my God, how dare you speak over the black experience? How dare you? You're a white person coming in here trying to tone police and oppress us. And I'm just like, yeah, well, if I show up with my black ass, I've been told, oh, well, you're half white. So what you say, you're just a bed wench. You're in bed with white supremacy and all that. And I'm just like, there are times I wonder if I'm a person.
I get very similar about being indigenous because I'm white assumed. And like, I am well aware to like the average world, I walk around both with the privilege of being assumed as white and assumed as a cis woman. I am never going to be somebody that argues that I don't receive those two privileges. But like, also I grew up in like white supremacist cults. So, like, I trust and believe that they can tell I'm not white if they're real deep in that shit. They might not know what flavor or not white, but they look at my facial structure and they're like, that's not a white bitch. So, but I think one of the things that is, like, so disempowering about this is, like, with all the stigma that comes with it is, you know, I was a victim of trafficking and now I'm a sex worker. And either way, radfems don't want to respect my fucking consent.
Yeah.
Traffickers didn't respect that I didn't want to be trafficked, and now radfems don't want to respect that I am showing whole on the timeline on a Tuesday of my own volition. And it's so frustrating for people who say that they're paragons of consent, who they only understand consent 101, which is enthusiastic consent, first of all. Like, bitch, get on my level, read something, like, think about something other than your own fucking, like, morals, I guess. But also, like, you just don't respect our consent. And, like, that doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel great to be told that I'm, like, an agent of the patriarchy or an agent of white supremacy when what happened to my family was that my great-grandmother was kidnapped, forced to marry a white man, forced to change her name, and I can't even bring her home to my tribe because the Canadian and American government won't agree that she was the same person. And you're telling me I'm an agent of white supremacy because I'm radicalizing people through the power of pussy? Because I think all my subs read theory. Every single one of them reads theory. So, like, really, who's the agent of white supremacy here?
Yeah.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry. Like,
to piggyback off that, I find that the disempowering thing is that sex workers are always blamed for things that is not our fault, like patriarchy and white supremacy. Like, people will say, like, oh, my boyfriend tried to choke me during sex. It's because, you know, there's choking in porn. Let's ban it. When really the problem is he doesn't understand consent or boundaries. Or, you know, oh, the beauty standard is so high because look at the bop house. And it's like, no, that's not what all sex workers look like. And, you know, people will just blame us for literally problems that are not even our fault. And that I believe that sex workers are all fight against that normative of, you know, people all need to look the same. And, you know, we all are big on consent. No one would be choking anyone, for example. And I find as well, a lot of civilians want to appropriate our culture. I know it sounds a bit funny, but then hate us. Like, Cara Larson is an example of this. She did a recent book, I love slutty women, but yet, you know, when I asked in the chat, I think if she's a pro-Nordic model, because I saw that story post, and it's like, so wait, you're pro-slutty women, but the minute someone gets paid and compensated and does it for a living, then you've got a problem with it, and then they're a victim of exploitation. More like, you're expecting women to be sluts for free, and I find that exploitative. Like, at least I get paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was like, or it was like one of that, like that lot of people that like has a shirt that says I support women's rights and wrongs, and the video below it was like, I fucking hate whores, I hate whores. Like, so you don't support women's wrongs because you've deemed sex work wrong, and the video below this or above this is you screaming that you hate whores. It's you know, it's just this as well of the, like, my yes means nothing to you.
Yeah.
And you bang on about how consent is so important, but if my yes means nothing to you, then that also means my no means nothing. And you are perpetuating rape culture, so it's like, it's a shit feeling to watch women perpetuate rape culture against me and ignore my consent. And, you know, like, I'm 29, I've dated plenty of men, I've had interactions with plenty of men where my consent has been ignored, but I honestly feel never to the grand scale that radical feminists ignore our consent every single day. You know, there might be a man when I was 18 who, like, shoved a thing in my bum without asking. Yeah, that's sexual assault, but you can have a conversation afterwards. That wasn't okay. And usually, in my experience, people who've done that, I won't, like, you know, I'm probably not going to talk to them again, but they've learned from that, you know, haven't they? I don't feel like the radical feminists learn anything from the conversations we try and have with them about consent. They just go on to continue to perpetuate the same harm and ignore consent continuously whilst saying that we're the reason that women get raped. But I've never ignored someone's consent, yes or no.
And then
you ignore ours every single day.
It's to ignore to ignore our consent and then pretend that that's not going to blow back on them and other people aren't going to ignore theirs, you know, to expect that that's going to have no negative consequences for themselves when they are saying that there are certain types of women who are incapable of consent, you know?
Yeah.
And I think too, like, as somebody who has experiences on both the trafficking and like sex work side, because like that's a huge part of like Rad Fem's arguments against sex work, because I think it's all trafficking. At least the traffickers were like morally consistent. They might have been wrong, but at least they were consistent. Like, they didn't give a fuck about my consent. They were real honest about the fact that they didn't give a fuck about my consent. They viewed me as an object to make them money or give them status or whatever it was. And at least they were consistent about that. But like, rad femmes will turn around and be like, no, I care about your consent and I care about all women and like, da 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 da. But then they turn around and they don't, I mean, not that I'm a woman, but they don't care about my consent. And then I'm like, can you at least like
and get in your DMs and tell you they hope you die?
Or that like, hope that you get raped. And we've seen the screenshots. We've seen the screenshots of that shit where they will slide into DMs thinking that they're being all, it was, I remember it was slid into somebody's DMs with like threats of death, rape, serious body shaming, a bunch of other horrible stuff, and that person turns out to be a minor. So why is a minor injecting themselves as a radical feminist into adult spaces where they are not supposed to be, while grifting to an audience and trying to profit off of it, because they were also over on Substack, and I think they were trying to monetize on their Substack while still being a minor, which is illegal, and they were doing so by going and watching explicit adult material and then coming back and describing it in like graphic detail to the audience. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I see the same arguments happening in like fandom spaces, because I'm like, listen, AO3 is like where I spend most of my screen time. If it's not my work sites, it's AO3. And like,
I used to work disco.
Okay, we're talking later. I see minors so often interjecting into like the dark fiction, like, you know, discussions and oh my god, Kingtober. And then I'm like, none of this is about you. Like, and it makes me not able to talk if y'all can't tell, because it just baffles me so much that I'm like, nobody's
it's like being suit, but a legal being suit.
Right.
Do you know what I mean by like the being suit thing?
Yeah. And I'm just, it blows my mind to see, and especially like minors doing things like rape and death threats too, because I'm sitting here like, first of all, you're 16. I bet you don't have great internet safety. Are you really prepared to message the wrong person that shit?
Yeah.
Because one day you're just going to get nothing back but a photo of the front of your fucking house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that's right, but like, it's the internet. And two, I remember when I was a teenager on Tumblr before the great Tumblr porn ban, and I literally refused to follow the porn accounts that I liked. I memorized their URLs because I knew if I followed them and they went and looked at me as a follower and they didn't block me because I had that I was a minor in my account, that they could get in trouble for what like they were posting and allowing a minor access to. So like, I'm sitting here being like, damn, kids have always been in spaces they're not supposed to be in, but at least we knew to shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say, is like, when I was a minor accessing adult content, at least I knew my place was not to tell adults what adult content was supposed to be, because I wasn't one. Like,
you're not supposed to tell on yourself.
I was only a minor for about 2 years when the internet came out. That's how fucking old I am. But even then, like, we had the AOL chat rooms, and where you had, you know, ASL was not American Sign Language. They wanted to know your age, your gender, your location. Hello, that is so fucking dangerous right there. And like, looking back, I'm going, oh, the adults talking to me were not good people. But also, if I was downloading what I shouldn't have been downloading, like, it's a shoulder, come on, we can do this. Ah, shit, parents are coming, disconnect. You know, I knew, like, not to, like, I memorized, like, what site do I want to go by? What are my search terms? What are my keywords? How long is it going to probably take? Okay, go. I knew not to let anybody else fucking know. I knew not to mouth off until I was, like, after 18, and even then I'm just like, I'm going to sit here and shut the fuck up for a while just to make sure I've got the rules right first.
I think
nowadays they use their full ass government name as their handle.
I think it speaks to a massive level of like entitlement that this space that is ostensibly not built for them should be created in a way that is consumable for them, you know, like as a minor they want this space to be child friendly when it is not intended to be that way. It's about sex, it's about kink, it's about porn. It's not about, you know, it's not for you.
Well, the funny thing is, the more child friendly you make something, the more you get child predators. Because child predators don't like people built like me. They are looking very specifically for a specific group of people, and they're going to go where those people are.
That's one of the other things I was going to touch on, actually, is a lot of us have talked about being minors in adult spaces, but I think a lot of the talk nowadays is about how a lot of people on the internet as young people have experienced grooming and things like that. And you mentioned the AOL chat rooms and those sorts of things. When I was young, it was Omegle. I'm sure it was probably the same for Luna because we're about the same age. But it was, you know, it was these Omegle chat rooms, and you'd get on a video call with an absolute fucking stranger from somewhere around the world, and they'd just have their dick out, you know, and you'd be like 12 and you'd be like, what's going on here, you know? And I never felt like I was predated on or groomed into watching porn. That was my curiosity about sex as a teenager, right? But I did feel like I was predated on and groomed on places like Omegle, on places like Instagram, on places like Facebook, or places where I was ostensibly allowed to be as a teenager, places that were not barred for me. Whereas on places like Pornhub, I did not have people coming into my DMs and, you know, trying to message me or trying to get things out of me. Whereas when I was in spaces that were designed supposedly to be safe for minors, that was where I experienced that. And I think there's a massive misconception that because porn exists, or because adults are asking of adult material, pornographic things of children, that is the porn industry doing that. But it's not. It's all of these other places where this is happening, you know?
Yeah, it's like the Ren Eleanor thing, just posting a child on the internet is opening them up to child predators. So if we actually want to talk about keeping kids safe from being predated on, then we would stop all these family influencers. We would stop children under the age of 16, 18, 14, whatever the government decided, from being posted on the internet. Yeah, we wouldn't try and curate an internet experience for children, because the internet isn't safe for adults. I know Palmer says that all the time, and I truly believe it, because like I can go on Instagram and I can follow an account that is currently, you know, in Palestine, and I can see babies in backpacks, people with missing limbs, children under rubble. I can watch Alex Peretti get shot. Watch all of that on Instagram, on TikTok, on Reddit, on YouTube, on Facebook. But porn? Right. That's the real harmful thing to children. Like, it's not safe for adults. It's definitely not safe for children. And the demonization of the porn industry, which is for adults, is no good to anyone, because it also then bleeds into sex education, which children need. Otherwise, we'll have people turning 18, watching porn and going, okay, that's how I have sex. Because they're not pairing this lack of what people... Because people do educate themselves through porn, whether it's right or wrong, because there are different types of porn to watch, and there are some that really do teach you how to eat a pussy or how to suck a cock. And there are loads out there that are absolutely fucking ridiculous. I've got one where my boyfriend controls me with an Amazon Prime remote control. You know, it's clearly not real. But it means that they're not pairing this like lack of any way to have any form of sexual experience before 18 with any form of good sexual education or explanations about like gender or sexuality or anything. It's just like, no.
It's more like something that I think like people just ignore, like I feel willfully, is that the less sex education you give children, the easier it is to groom them. Easier it is to do something harmful to them because they don't understand. And so like desperately wanting to ban porn will immediately it will bleed over and affect sex education. It already, like, sex education in the US is like non-existent, right? It doesn't really exist at all, and it's usually an abstinence model, if anything, is taught, and that's pretty much it. But even that is probably, like, you can go on the internet and access something that is, like, more information. whether it be for gender or sexuality or just what do I do with what I have, you know? Like, you can do that, but like a ban on porn is going to ban those things too. And something that people, I think one of the things that like can feel frustrating for me is that a lot of people, like when we were talking earlier about like what is empowerment, a lot of people know what porn is because in their mind they see it as a specific thing, but to actually like legalize or like legislate against it, to create laws around it, you have to define it in such a vague way that it's going to, and intentionally so, it's going to include things like sex education. And part of the reason that happens, and part of the reason why purity culture is running amok, is one, because fascism is coming back rampantly, and two, because religious entities, specifically Christian entities, they exist on the model of like women are made to serve, and you groom a child from a young age to not have thoughts, to not have aspirations. And women who fuck, women who have sex, women who understand consent on autonomy and do things like what we do, whether we're doing full service work, whether we're camming, whether we're stripping, it doesn't matter. We have an understanding of our own bodily autonomy, and that is offensive. That is offensive, and it is repulsive. And it directly flies in the face of this mentality of like women were made to serve and groom. And you can't start a kid out at a young age. You can't start a girl out at 6 on learning how to be a wife and a mother if you have education about like bad touch, and this is what, you know, this is what is good, and this is what is bad, and this is something to look out for, and if someone's doing something, talk to us. Getting rid of that is going to usher in so much more harm to kids, and the fact that people just don't give a shit because we're whores is like, that's something that's like, it's so enraging, because see it, you know what's happening, you've watched it happen to other people, you know exactly what's going to happen when this happens, and yet it's happening right in front of you, and then people are doing stupid ass shit like being like, oh my god, it's like The Handmaid's Tale, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, The Handmaid's Tale was written about shit that was already happening to black and brown women. Like, it's not about, like, what if. It has happened. It is happening. And it will continue to happen as long as your desperation to remove any sort of, like, sexual impurity exists, because women are always going to be sexually impure. Because we're not supposed to like sex. We're not supposed to have bodily autonomy. We're not supposed to have thoughts. We're not supposed to have opinions. And sex work means that not only do we have all of those things, but we don't need a man. We can do everything on our own, and that's terrifying.
When you look historically as well, sex work has existed for a long time as purely a way for women to escape patriarchal marriage, right? So a way for women to sustain themselves without having to be dependent on a man. And I think that is still true, obviously, to this day. But when we look at it as the history of like that, it's so easy to see how sex work is othered, because it is actively pulling people away from patriarchal norms and heterosexual, you know, nuclear family, that kind of model.
And two, I think it's like super insidious, because and again, I can only really reference this bill because it's for my state, but you know, this is true of, I think, all of these types of bills being passed. Like that bill I was talking about that put the sin tax on porn in my state says that any website that hosts over 1/3 or more material that is considered sexually harmful to minors is subject to that bill. So like, are we talking about, is Wikipedia gonna be included? Is any website that talks about anything to do with being trans? And I mean, we know the answer. The answer is yes. You know what I mean? Like, full stop. That's absolutely like why they write these bills like that. But it's so insidious because, like, they, you know, to put it the way Palma loves to put it, they love preying on people's compassionate fears. Is like, I don't think that you're wrong for wanting to protect children. I think you're wrong about how you're going about it. And like, I was a child that went through CSA. I was a child who was not protected by any adult near me. And so like, when I see these rad femmes and these people saying like, sex work is bad and you're contributing to kids that get, you know, raped and assaulted and trafficked, I'm sitting here like, first of all, you're talking about me. That was me. And so first of all, like, that's to bring it back to the disempowering question. Like, that's one of the more disempowering things is I'm like, how dare you say that, like, I'm the reason other kids are getting treated the way I was treated, when, like, I can tell you when I have a sub approach me that refuses to age verify or then, like, further admits that they're, like, 17 or something, do you want to know the first thing I do is, after blocking, the first thing I do is my little, you know, the joke about, like, all us girls are great at being FBI agents, is I see what I can track down about where they go to school or their parents or their real, and then I send an email and I say, hey, like, your kid is engaging in like very dangerous online behaviors for their age. And like, usually I send an email to a school over a parent, because who knows that the parents aren't also the reason the kid is looking out, you know what I mean? That, so like, but I try to, like, I'm not a mandated reporter. I treat myself like one. So like, I don't know, like, I kind of rambled a little bit, but I think all of, like, the most disempowering parts of this job are the way that we're treated like we somehow don't want to keep kids safe, or that we're okay with, like, pedophilia and, like, rape culture and all of those things. And I'm sitting here being like, but you say you're advocating for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they think we're another mop house. And they always bring up, like, one example of a bad actor, and it's like, does every bop house do this, or did one person, one house make a really shitty decision, and now you're saying it's all of us? And they're like, well, we should be able to teach our kids about sex. You shouldn't be, you know, you as sex workers should be. I'm like, well, then teach your kids, because you ain't teaching your kids shit. Because if your child knew shit, they wouldn't have gone and entertained being on a bop house TikTok.
Yeah,
they would have gone, you know what, I'm a minor, that's not a good look, I'm not going to be there, no thank you, you're not appropriate. I shouldn't want to work with, because you're willing to do inappropriate things, even if I'm fully clothed and there's no sexy stuff going on, you're willing to do inappropriate things and bring a minor into it. But parents and schools are honestly not willing to actually teach children about sex, about consent, about, hey, these are some of the dicey situations that look fine for about the first 5 minutes, but if you get into it, this could be a really, really bad situation to go into. Like, hey, if your coach only wants to talk to you in their office with the door closed, all the blinds down, and, you know, them sitting on the desk very close, yeah, that's a red flag, but we're not teaching, you know, children this. But we somehow want the government to come in and dictate that everybody's got to... Look, I learned how to swallow for a fucking reason. I didn't want kids. I made sure not to put myself in that situation. Fine enough, I got away with that. But, like, if I were to have a child, the first things that I would be doing is giving them, okay, here's a book on... Let's talk about what periods are like, because I started early, you might, here's that. And now here's what consent looks like. Some things that I was never fucking told. I was never fucking told that if somebody grabbed me by the hand and forced me, like, I could kick up a fuss and get this person off of me. If I didn't want somebody rubbing their fucking beard burned face up against mine as a child, I didn't have the autonomy to tell them, no, I don't want you to do that. So I had, you know, several male relatives who were like, come over and hug me, and then literally beard burned the side of my face. And my parents will be like, you just gotta go with it. I'm just like, okay, apparently if people violate my personal space, I just gotta go with it.
They desperate need to keep children innocent, which further forces them into the hands of predators. Because if you're calling it a foo-foo rather than a vagina, you are, you know, it's uncomfortable. I know, but you are catering to what paedophiles and predators like. They like the childlikeness. They like the innocence. They like that this child doesn't know that being sat on the stranger's lap isn't okay. They like that. they like the ability to manipulate and groom. So whilst it's really probably hard to have a conversation with your 7-year-old about why you don't talk to strangers on the internet, you don't just say because you could get kidnapped. You say there are people out there that are sick and they aren't well and they like children, and that's not appropriate. And you can have age-appropriate conversations about this, and then when they're 15, you can say, like, you know, you can have an Instagram when you're 16, I need to keep you off the internet because I know it might seem extreme to you, but this is where dangerous people live, and this is what these people look for. And rather than having these tough conversations with their kids, which would keep them safe, they try and avoid it completely, which gives predators a fucking walk through the door.
And I think, too, because if you teach a kid that they have autonomy, eventually your kid is going to realize they have autonomy against you.
Mm.
Yeah. Yep.
And like eventually they're going to realize that, like, and then you as a parent, and I'm not a parent, but then you as a parent have to go like, okay, am I actually making decisions that are well reasoned and logical and make sense to my kid, or am I just exerting control? And so it's very much easier to just teach your kid that they don't have control and then expect them to understand power dynamics as soon as they turn 18.
I think as well, the conversation around sex is so stigmatized. Not even just sex work, but sex itself is such a stigmatized conversation. It's such a conversation that is so uncomfortable for so many people, especially when talking to children, not even just among other adults, but especially when talking to children, how to start that conversation, how to bring it up, you know, how to talk about it in the appropriate way, all of those things. I think people don't understand that teaching children consent is not actually about teaching children about sex at all. Teaching children about consent is about teaching children about bodily autonomy, and like you say, good touch, bad touch. I can say no to a hug from my uncle if I want to, like all of those basic things. It's about understanding that your child's comfortability and bodily autonomy comes first, and that doesn't have to include sex. And when it comes to having conversations around sex, I think if we could get to a place in society where we were able to have conversations more openly, then it wouldn't have to be this like sit down birds and the bees talk, but it could rather be every time a child gets curious and has a question, you just casually answer it, and that's that, you know what I mean? And so as they grow up and as they find things out and want to learn things, it matches their, you know, developmental stages, because they're coming to you and asking it, and they feel that they can come to you and ask it because you haven't created an environment of shame. And I think that's one thing that my mum actually did really well, because she's a doctor, and so she was always just so like pragmatic about any time I asked a question, she'd be like, well, this is a penis and this is a vagina and this does this and this does that. And it was never very pleasure based or anything like that. It was very pragmatic. So I think there could have been things that were better in that regard, but it was never something that she shied away from talking about. You know, it doesn't matter if we were at the dinner table, out at the park, like wherever, if I had a question about something, she would just answer it, and it was no big deal. And that made me feel like I could keep asking questions, you know. And I think that's such a valuable thing, to create a safe space for a child to have those questions and to come to you as their caregiver, so that they don't go to someone else.
If you're a parent and do sex work, I find that people will automatically be very classist and horrible to you and be like, you must be awful at your job, or, you know, you are inherently a bad parent just because of what you do. And it's like, what if people find your work and start bullying your child? It's like, well, someone could find, if I was working as a janitor or a less desirable profession, children will bully them for no matter what reason. If they're working a job that's less desirable, we should be working on decreasing the stigma and, you know, the
teaching
barriers.
Children
or,
that bullying
you know,
is unacceptable.
But also, why would kids be watching my content at the school? Why would I be introducing myself as in that light, like with my stage name, like children?
Yeah, because I work at a haunted house, so I am in community with some like 16, 17-year-olds. And I'll be very open about, I work in the adult industry, but that's as far as I go. You know what I mean? Because like, I don't think there's anything different if I say adult industry. Like, obviously a 16, 17-year-old is going to draw their own conclusions about that, but also like, I'm friends with their parents, and I know their parents don't care that I say that. You know what I mean? But like, if I had kids and we were going to school, like, no, like entertainment industry would be, or like personal assistant, or I had a friend in a different state who's a social worker just go, you should say you're a life coach, because like technically, technically, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, so like there's ways to field that conversation that are like, I think, age appropriate, both for your own children and like other people's children.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Also, I feel like people will use that sort of like kids see porn, or like kids are seeing porn at a young age, and I always want to be like, yes, and who's showing it to them?
Yeah.
How are they viewing it? How are they able to view it? Like, these things are actually,
why don't you have parental controls on?
yeah, and it's like, but it's also like, who is someone showing Like, if it's like this kid saw it and they showed it to this kid, who showed it to this kid? Like, someone may be abusing these kids, and like no one's thinking of it in those terms. They're thinking of it in like, literally a kid just like opens their phone, like they unlock their phone, and it's just like suddenly there's like a vagina being like, watch my porn, and it's like, that's not fucking happening. Like this is something that like that needs to be addressed, but not through sex workers. It's like, you wouldn't go to like a strip club and be like, hey, by the way, if any fucking kids are here, you guys are going to jail. It's like, yeah, we wouldn't fucking let a kid in. What the fuck are you talking? This isn't our, it has nothing to do with the person doing the job, because we're not, I posted something about this on my Facebook, but I was like, when people talk about kids interacting with porn, like that needs to be a conversation. Like, an 11-year-old is not creating an OnlyFans account, subscribing to someone, and interacting as a fucking customer. That's not happening. They're likely viewing anything on a site that has, like, the US isn't going to have any legality over. Like, they're just going to be seeing something that's either leaked, so it's illegal anyway, or like they're not seeing what I'm doing on my sites. If they see any content that I make, it's not because I'm sharing it. It's not because I'm doing anything to encourage them to see it. I'm not interacting with minors. If there is a minor anywhere, I don't, like, on my TikTok, I, check that little box. It's like, no one under 18 can view my profile. I do things on my own to keep minors from interacting with me. And if they're doing it anyway, that's not my fucking fault. But it's someone's. But it's not a sex worker's fault that kids are inserting themselves in spaces they shouldn't be, that aren't being monitored by their parents, who are being, like, shown this material by adults and being groomed or being abused in this way. Like, that's not the fault of the people creating content. Like, you can't say, like, because children might get, like, touched or, improperly, and people might do something to a kid, all sex is now illegal because someone might do it to a kid. That doesn't make sense. Know that kids aren't supposed to, do this. Kids don't have the ability to consent, so you can't interact with them in that way. And if you are doing it, it's your problem. It's not someone else's problem. Like, doesn't, those sort of things are, like, always so confusing to me, where it's like, people will be like, kids see porn, so we must ban porn. It's like, where do you think porn exists that kids are seeing it? Because if you, it's just like wild to me that, like, people want to protect kids, but they always want to protect kids in a way that, like, doesn't do anything for kids.
Well, and I have to laugh because, okay, again, my age, it shows. Back in the day, before the internet, there was still porn. Like, it usually came from, like, finding your mom's, your dad's, your uncle's, your older brothers or siblings' stash. We lied, cheated, and stole.
There was a magazine, you could walk into any, like, corner shop in the UK. Literally at kid eye level. It was at kid eye level. And for so long, no one said anything, and they were like, we've got to protect the kids, and it was like, they've been seeing tits for 4 years. Also Katie Price's tits.
The first porn that I saw was, like, in my early teens, and it was on a VHS tape that my sibling found and brought home, and we put it into the VCR. I'm talking the old school, clunk it down VC fucking R. So, and we're just like, oh my god, what is, oh, that's how that's supposed to, I didn't know that you could have more than one person in there, but okay. But the funny thing is, even before that, we were fucking looking at National Geographic. Because, and I'm not proud of this, I'm so not proud of this, but National Geographic had, native and indigenous tribes, and it just, there were things everywhere, and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's what that looks like. And because it was National Geographic, and there wasn't really any sensationalization around it, they're like, this is just their traditional garb, and let's go through their life and whatnot. I was just like, oh, it doesn't have to be a sexual experience. Oh, it's just body parts.
Yeah, I think because a lot of the time the only way to get like body parts on social media is to be a sex worker or posting provocatively, that we have no way for people to just see bodies. Like I see talks about like nude mums. I had a nude mum. I have a completely that helped me view what a normal woman's body should look like. The first naked woman I saw was my mum after having me, and then as I grew up after having my brother as well. I saw a normal woman. I didn't like the first naked woman I saw wasn't someone on Nuts magazine or, you know, a naked girl kissing another naked girl on YouTube. It was a normal human being. Not to say that these other people weren't, but you know what I mean? It was a non-sexualized female body. And as someone who is bisexual, I do honestly think that's helped me not have to like view women as like sexual and have to kind of like work back from like, oh, I'd fuck a woman but I couldn't date her. Do you know what I mean? It's just been like a woman's a woman and everyone's woman's body is different. You know, I didn't have to look at you know, my dad walking around or my mum walking around as like, oh, sexy naked. It was just like, that is a human body. And we have so little of that anymore that I can understand why we've got to the point where like you can't even show a bit of nipple or you can't even wear a bra because kids will see that and kids can only look at bodies and men can only look at bodies as sexual because there's so little non-sexualized naked bodies online or in movies or media or anything.
We don't hold that same standard for other things that would harm children, like graphic descriptions or scenes of like gore, like realistic gore and violence. Hell, I remember working for Blockbuster or video rental place. Sorry, I shouldn't have put a brand in there. Where we had access to a particular series of VHS tapes and films called The Faces of Death, where they showed real life people in situations as they were being unalived, blown apart, beheaded, all manner of things. And we were able to rent them at like 18 years old or possibly even 17 years old. Or, you know, you just slipped it into a jacket pocket, whichever. But yeah, like I saw all of those in my very like formative late teen years. And I'm just like, wow, that's a lot of fucked up ways to go out. But did I go out and like start unaliving people in new creative ways? I went, right, fuck no, I'm going to be avoiding this, I'm going to be avoiding that. But it's like, people, like, we don't hold sex and violence to the same standards. Oh, it's okay if, you know, the kids see violence and they'll get, it's just cartoonish, it's just on a game, they'll get past it, it's fine. Or we'll explain that, oh, this is fictional, it doesn't actually really take place in life, you should not do these things, But boy, when it comes to sex, heaven forbid we put together a good fantasy with some decent acting. Oh my god, everybody must do this. Oh, you're teaching them how. Like, what the fuck part of fiction, fantasy, and real life did you forget? And why aren't you explaining the difference to your child?
Yeah. All right, we've got a little bit off topic, but let's bring it back with another question. So, the next question is, why are non-sex workers so stuck on the idea of empowerment, and who benefits from framing sex work through a lens of empowerment versus exploitation?
Patriarchy 2.0. As in patriarchy red.
People who want to exploit us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like they benefit from like flipping it around that way. But also the like radical feminists and anti-porn people, they can't see past their own like nose.
I think it's control. It's very much religion without the Bible verse. You can only fit into this very narrow purview or box of what a woman or a femme or an AFAB is supposed to be, which includes, you know, how you like sex, how you express how you like sex or don't like sex, who you express you want to have sex with or not, usually within a very narrow purview. And patriarchy has done that for centuries, and now we have people like the rad femmes coming in, and they want to take the power that patriarchy has and put it into their own hands, and they're treating it as if that transfer of power, as long as it's in women's hands, as long as it's in AFAB hands, it'll be so much better. And I'm like, you're still telling me who I can fuck, how I can express myself as a human being sexually. You're just taking the power and putting it in your own little grubby, dirty hands and acting as if I'm not noticing. Bitch, it might not be a real dick, but that silicone is still dick. Like, I'm still being forced to gag on it, and I don't like it either way. Like,
so much of the rhetoric is around like destroying these gender norms and like breaking these ideas of what it's supposed to mean to be a woman, but they've ended up sort of reconstructing their own idea of what an ideal woman is and how a woman should behave in a way that is feminist, and making choices that are feminist and whatever that means to them. Because what is a feminist choice? Like, even volunteering to work with women is not necessarily a feminist choice. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's all of these ideas about what an anti-feminist choice is, but no one can tell me what a feminist choice is, you know?
And I think, too, it comes from, like, a very... from a misunderstanding, I think, like, first, of what matriarchy is. Because in the same way that white people think the eradication of white supremacy would mean Black and Indigenous people and people of color treating them the way they have always treated Black, Indigenous, and people of color, I think, like, a lot of women, especially rad femmes, think that matriarchy is just the patriarchy but women in control. And I come at this from both an Indigenous standpoint and, like, an Appalachian, like, Southern standpoint. It's absolutely not what matriarchy is, like, by any means. Like, what we're seeing in Minneapolis is matriarchy. Because the reason that this activism is working is because it is led by women who care. That is matriarchy, not like this bullshit of, like, women telling you what to do instead of men. And so, like, it's control. It's as long as there is a woman who is less than them, then they think they are better by proxy. It is, and they focus so much on that empowerment because they think we feel the same shame that they feel. They haven't unpacked that shame and guilt are largely emotions that you are taught to feel and not that you feel intrinsically as a person in most cases. And so they think, I can shame this woman for acting in ways that would be shameful to me. And then I can make them change their behavior. And if all women just stopped being whores and sluts, then men would treat us better. And that has never been true, and it never will be true. And I want whatever drugs they're fucking on. Because Lord, I have been doing this sober for many years, and I do want whatever the fuck they're on.
No, I don't want what they're on, because that's a whole new level of delusional and dangerous.
maybe just a microdose for a night.
Little bump.
But like, yeah,
I think
there's
if you go, sorry. What I think is it's mostly like people's disgust towards us. Like, people think our job is weird and gross, so they, project that onto us because they think, oh, if you're in this industry, you must be weird and gross. And a lot of it is rooted in patriarchy and misogyny. Because if you go on like a cis man's who is in the industry's like comments, he won't be having rad femmes attacking him. If you look at Girth Master's comment section, for example, and I'm not like doing this as a diss towards him. I don't think anyone deserves to have mean, nasty comments just because of their work. But he doesn't deal with the same hate as his woman or, queer or people of color in the industry. And people don't realize that they're perpetuating these things they're perpetuating these ideas that are harming us by, because they're disgusted by us at the end of the day. When really, by making these conversations, is it exploitation, is it empowerment? It's just a job at the end of the day. And it should be treated as such.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said that something can be exploitative and empowering at the same time. Like, these are not separate, like, distinct concepts. Like, I can be exploited by the law that doesn't allow me to exercise the full autonomy that I want to, the financial discrimination that is constantly making me like set up new bank accounts and pay processing fees and all of these things, and that can be exploitative. But at the same time, I can feel empowered by the level of flexibility that I have, the level of ability that I have to care for my physical health. Like, those two things can exist at the same time, and they don't have to be opposed to each other. They can work in tandem, and sometimes you might feel more exploited because of the conditions that you're in, and sometimes you might feel more empowered because of the conditions that you're in. And that those two things don't necessarily have to be one or the other. Like, you could feel both more exploited and more empowered at the same time because of a set of circumstances, you know, and those two things don't have to be diametrically opposed to each other. They don't have to be it's one or the other. It can be both, and that's how most work is. I think most work, especially most work that would be described as empowering, like people were saying earlier, doctor, lawyer, surgeon, all of these things that are like respected jobs, they are also can be exploitative, because you're still working under capitalism. You're still going to starve if you lose your job. You're still going to lose your home if you can't get your next paycheck. Like, you're not being exploited just because you're empowered. Yeah, you're no longer being exploited just because you've made it to the top of your industry. You're still being exploited. So there's no space under capitalism where no exploitation exists. So we're all working on a paradigm of some level of exploitation, and we're all just figuring out how best to deal with that, you know.
Even doctors, lawyers, and nurses are being exploited because they're often they have to do like 12-hour, 24-hour, 36-hour shifts where they're just expected to constantly be on and present while taking care of people in high pressure situations, to the point where they get burnout, psychological damage, you know, like, just there's so much stuff that can happen. They can even have full like physical breakdown because of it. But because their position is lauded, because their position is elevated socially, they're seen as not being exploited. And I'm like, you just worked a 36-hour shift, went home, passed the fuck out for 3 days because your body was so torn up. You've got heel spurs, you have like a fucked up sleep pattern, you know, you're going through some major psychological trauma because your patient just threw urine, feces, and blood at you all in one fell swoop. You were assaulted outside by a family member, but like, because I'm a whore, because I'm a sex worker, but because they're have a status that is a little bit more lauded and desirable, somehow they're not exploited. I'm like, no, bitch, we're all being exploited. We are all being exploited. Like,
and I think too that the like empowerment discussion and like keeping the focus on that is actively how they're keeping us, and like a nebulous they and a nebulous us, you know what I mean? But like that's how they, if we keep having these discussions, because like, as I was thinking about, you know, getting on this call and having this discussion, it's an important one to have, but I almost feel like also a little like overdone. Like, we keep focusing on empowerment and not rights, you know what I mean? And if they keep bringing up the empowerment, then they get to keep us in this space where we don't get to sit there and say, I am a laborer just like you. That if you really think that they're right, if you think that there is like no war but the class war, or like any of these things, right, that like you are actively, by making my metric as a whore empowerment and everybody else's labor, you are actively creating this separation that keeps us from coming together as laborers. And like it's just like it allows them to control the narrative, because like we're constantly playing catch up, because when people hear that's not empowering, they don't hear that doesn't give you choice, that doesn't give you agency, that doesn't give you freedom. They hear that doesn't make you feel good.
Yeah.
That you know what I mean? And so because we've linked empowerment and emotion and like to a feeling, then they get to say that's not empowering. You must, and the implication is you must feel like shit about your life. You must, everybody around you must think you're an awful person. And then we spend all our time trying to prove our personhood and our humanity, instead of trying to come together. And I know like on our side from sex workers, we are absolutely trying to come together with other laborers, but it allows all the other laborers to go, well, you are just a victim. Maybe you do need rescue, like, because like maybe I'm exploited, but at least I'm not ashamed of the work I do.
Yeah. And that moves us beautifully onto my next question, which is, what conversations should people be having instead?
Decrim. Conversation workers and decrim. Like, as someone who has lived in a Nordic model and lives in fully decrim, I can definitely say the pros of having clear law of what is trafficking and exploitation. All the venues I worked at, they have signage on in all the like the skills rooms of like all the community resources in the area and just statewide, but also what the legal definition for trafficking is and the law around like what's legal and like our workers' rights in our state. And the fact that, you can have an ABN, so Australian business number, so you're a registered business, you can pay your taxes, so you can, buy property and all that. You don't have to worry about your bank account shutting down. You can even be on Centrelink, so on benefits. And as long as you're claiming your hours, you can still, be on disability and stuff. And as long as you follow the regulations, if you do... Like in my state, actually, it's also illegal for landlords to discriminate against tenants that are sex workers. And there's just some laws about how we can advertise and we can't be out on the streets near schools or stuff, very basic stuff like that. But having those clear definitions helps people know if they're in a safe position or not, and helps them get help if they are in danger. And also the fact that there are free or community services for sex workers here, and even legal services to get help. And if you go to the police or if you have a bad client, you can just call the cops and they will come help you. If the client doesn't pay you can deal with it if someone runs out on you, if you're a hairdresser or nail tech. And it's vice versa. The clients are protected because if they get scammed, they can go to the police, or if something happens sketchy, they have the legal rights as well. So it protects everyone at the end of the day. The Nordic model, we're criminalizing and removing that sense of agency and saying, if you do this work, you must be a victim. And, your clients are these evil, evil people. Then you're just making the only, dangerous people more inclined and putting workers in more danger because they have to be more underground and they're at threat of, losing their bank accounts. If they're an immigrant, being deported, or all these sorts of other things. They're not legally protected by, having full decriminalization.
I think from a very American standpoint, it needs to be, in my opinion, zoomed out into a labor rights issue, because it absolutely is. I think we need to be talking about police brutality and ICE brutality and the intersections of the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And trafficking and how that intersects, because everybody loves to talk about trafficking, but then their view of trafficking is a white woman being kidnapped from next door's fucking minivan. You know what I mean? And so I think those are some of the bigger overarching discussions we need to have, and how they relate to sex work, and also how sex workers are some of the first people to see when somebody is being trafficked, to understand what that looks like and help those people. And then honestly, I think it just needs to be discussions and conversations about it doesn't matter if the work is empowering. What I want to see is that every single person who is in this industry who would rather not be, who given the right supports would not be in this industry, I want them to have the supports to leave this industry. I want them to have universal basic income and access to healthcare, and to make sure that, I would probably qualify for disability, but I would have to get divorced. And I couldn't make any money, because that's how it works in America. We still don't have marriage equality because disabled people still can't get married and keep their fucking benefits. You know what I mean?
Same in Australia. You can lose your benefits if you're disabled, and if you're claiming disability, they forge your incomes, one. And obviously, it's unfortunate that marriage equality, it's a worldwide issue that disabled folk don't have that privilege.
Yeah, and those are the conversations I want to see happening, is how do we make sure that people who don't want to be in this industry can detransition out of this industry and move into an industry that they want, and concurrently, not one more important than the other, but concurrently, how do we keep people who are in this industry and want to be in this industry safe? How do we make sure they can come home? How do we make sure that they don't have to do more precarious forms of this work that they don't want to do just to make ends meet? And the way you do those things is universal basic income, universal healthcare, rent control, fucking all of these things, grocery price control, you know what I mean? And again, that's why I keep tying it back into, this is at the end of its day a labor rights issue. Sex worker rights are labor rights, and as long as sex workers don't have the rights, then no laborers have rights, because it never stops with us.
Yeah.
Well, and I definitely want to see more conversations around literally destigmatization, not even just of our jobs, but of being able to talk about sex, being able to talk about kink, being able to talk about fetish, because I don't think a lot of people, civilians especially, understand what kink, fetish, BDSM, sex work even is. They just think, oh, it's either full service or you're a mattress actress. It's just all flat. And they don't know how to have discussions around those. And because they don't know how to have discussions around those issues, they aren't getting any nuance. It is all just all in the garbage bucket. It's all the same thing. It's like, no, there's nuance, and there's nuance that you need to be able to talk about, because it comes down to a lot of things about like consent, how we process trauma, how we process emotion. A lot of people don't seem to understand CNC. They don't understand breath control. They don't understand like so many different kinks and fetishes. And it's like, it's because we aren't having destigmatized conversations around those activities, let alone destigmatizing sex itself.
Yeah, I think
I was going to say, I think the most important thing in all of this, of what we're saying, that what needs to be spoken about, is it's us that need to be speaking about it. It's not people that have never fucked to pay their bills in their life. It's not people that dipped their toe in. It's not people that didn't owe her for 3 months because they thought it was going to be really easy. It's not people whose best mate was a sex worker, and it's not someone that wants to do sex work or has read books about sex work or has cherry-picked which sex workers fit in with the narrative that they want, and they've only gone for people that have had a really horrible time in the industry and, you know, maybe are letting their own personal experience cloud their critical thinking in what is best for people still in the industry. I think that these conversations need to be had by current sex workers, and then on the back of that, ex-sex workers, and then allies. I think the people that need to be talking about this are us, and I think that any conversations that we want to have are the conversations that we should be having, which is all the stuff that we've spoken about. But I don't think that someone that has no idea what sex work is like or hasn't done sex work in 10 years and isn't speaking to people who are currently doing it from all different walks of sex work and all different parts of the world, I don't think that people who are should be making these videos unless they're like well thought out. Lots of sex work have been spoken to, and honestly sex workers have been consulted, because there's so many times where I can see that someone clearly is pro sex work, pro decrim, but they haven't got the right language, or you know, and then, you know, sex workers will go to their comment sections and, you know, like 9 times out of 10 they're really receptive to be like, oh, thank you for educating me. But we've still had to do even more legwork with our allies, because a lot of the time we're still not being consulted and our videos are so suppressed, or you know, like we just give up making them sometimes because we're so burnt out that a lot of these conversations are being had by people that have never in their life done sex work, or haven't in the time period that we're currently in with OSA and the Nordic models being proposed.
Yeah, I think as well as
Me
that,
too.
I forgot what I was going to say. You go.
Well, I mean, I'm sort of a broken record, and everything that I talk about, I always bring it back to colonialism, specifically because here in the U.S., like, like, the attitude, the purity culture, you know, stigmatization of sex, these are all very colonial attitudes that have existed, and things, you know, part of, like, I get sort of big-brained about it all, and I can make it all connect to everything, but, like, even something like, you know, decrim, like, the way that it gets talked about, people will be like legalization versus decrim, and, like, framing it from a lens of, like, if you are trying to decolonize or work on this colonial attitude that we have here in the U.S. specifically, like, when anything is carceral, when anything is prison-based, when anything is like the law needs to take over, this is inherently colonial. This is inherently something like the police existed, the police were created to cash runaway slaves. Like, this is inherently harmful. ACAB isn't just when you don't like what's happening, it's all the time. These things existed these things exist because of colonialism. And like, you know, you could be like, well, that's a bit of a reach, but like our attitudes towards sex, our attitude towards the human body, like all of these things are inherently colonial. And like even, you know, the way that we view, you know, sex and sexuality, these things were not true for Indigenous people. They, you know, we weren't, you know, anti-queer, we had diverse gender, we didn't have these attitudes of purity, but colonialism came and they tried to completely eradicate us. And I say things like, you know, I always think about things like when, you know, they like obscenity laws, and I think personally that like for a long time, like things like speaking our language was illegal. Our ceremonies were illegal. Things were illegal for us to do. For Indigenous people in the U.S. and in Canada, like all over Turtle Island, we have been kept from so many things, and only very recently have we been able to start learning our own language and speaking it legally. So if you think about things like obscenity laws, why do you think that a different language, something that's not English, the way that people have here, especially like the attitude towards languages that aren't English, like you're in America, learn how to speak English, you know, these things, they will be considered obscenities as well. Like there is such a closed mind sort of when you talk about things that are obscene, people are like, well, I know what's obscene. It's what I consider to be obscene. But everybody has that same perspective and it's all different. So like to create these, I just feel like anything where you're talking about liberty, sexual liberty or autonomy, gender, all of these things, they get stretched all the way back to colonialism, and they can be like, you can tie everything back to colonialism and white supremacy, because what's more pure than a virgin white woman, you know, like these things are so intertwined, and I mean, I can always bring everything back to colonialism, and I'm happy to do that, but you know, I think it's really, really important when you're talking about things like when people are like, you know, get so incensed about like compliance and like wanting to criminalize. I think it's a very easy thing to be like, why do you want something carceral? Why do you want more prison? Why do you want more policing? Like these things are extremely and inherently colonial, and these things are very harmful to Black, Brown, Indigenous communities all over. And that sort of like conversation, like what everybody said, I agree with what all of you have said about the conversations that need to happen, but I think it's really important to like sort of recognize that like whiteness is there always. Like white women are the most in, like they're always, ragtons are always white women. Whiteness comes in and it's like, I know what's right, I know what's pure, I know what's good, I know what's bad, and that is a very dangerous thing. And I think that we should always be really mindful of where colonialism, as how far colonialism has sort of reached, and how its fingers are everywhere, and sort of the impact that it's had. And like, yes, we're in 2026, and you know, there's all this technology, but like you can have like AI, you know, you can like, you know, prompt Grok to create sexual imagery of someone. Like, I'm not allowed to make porn, like, you know, so there's all of these things where like autonomy for women is still so difficult. And you know, thinking of like matriarchy being what it was, matriarchy was not like you said, matriarchy wasn't like patriarchy uno reverso, like that's not what it was. Like patriarchy or matriarchy was women having power, but women being revered was what it was. It wasn't women holding power over other people. It was the idea that women create life, they are more revered, but men still held positions of power. It wasn't as like women have power, men are nothing. That's not what it was. And like calling it matriarchy is a little bit, you know, I know some people don't really enjoy calling it matriarchy because of what it engenders, I guess. but you know, it was a completely different thing, and like patriarchy is its own evil, but it's patriarchy still comes from colonialism, and it's part of white supremacy and all of these things. And like, I think, you know, getting rid of patriarchy, you'd still have that like level that you would have to like dig through of like white supremacy, colonialism, and all this shit. So I think that the most important thing is like finding all the ways that it connects. All of these things are so important, but like what Luna said of like listening to fucking sex workers talk about this shit, you know, like not talking over us, not saying like, I know more than you because I'm not a dirty whore, you know, like it's important to listen to us, but like listen to us through the lens of understanding that a lot of people's concepts of sex and sexuality are through the bastardization that has come from colonial. And I don't know, I can connect everything back to.
I think I was going to say, I think that's quite an important thing as well. Like something that's come up is different movements that are all sort of intertwined. And I think one of the things that we really need to try and be pushing is coalition building between these movements, you know, so getting people who are Indigenous sex workers to be talking about how that connects, you know, sex workers' rights and Indigenous rights, and getting people who are disabled sex workers to talk about how that involves disability movements, and to get these other marginalized communities who are experiencing not the same but a lot of very similar types of oppression, and especially when it comes to things like the legal system. A lot of us are excluded in very similar ways from things like financial institutions, banking, social media discrimination. Like all of these things affect a lot of us in very similar ways, and I think there's a lot of power in coming together as all of these communities and having like a unified voice, and having sex workers in all of these movements as well, and having sex workers listened to in all of these separate spaces, because I think coming together, there's so much more of us. There's so, you know, the more voices we have, the louder we'll be heard.
And I think too, if I can piggyback off of Z, I would love to see the discussion happen of how ethics and morality have nothing to do with your emotions. That you can feel how you feel. Like I always say that my ethics and morals are there to remind me what I believe, even when my emotions would have me act otherwise. I don't believe anybody deserves to be in prison for life. There are some people in my life, though, who emotionally I'm like, throw their ass in jail and let them rot. But like my emotions and my morals are there because I am still a person who feels things. And like emotions are not logical, and they're not meant to be logical. And so I would love to see the discussions happen too about like, you can have hard, icky feelings about sex work and sex. I'm not saying that you have to wake up tomorrow and be pro-sex and like all your bits flying in the wind and wanting to participate in BDSM and all of those things. You can be somebody who like very much believes that for yourself, like sex is procreation only. It should only be happening in the marriage bed and when you're trying to have kids and with the lights off and fucking all of that. You can believe that for your life and still be pro decrim for everybody. Your morals can still say other people should not have to live life the way I live, even if emotionally this is what I feel to be true. About how sex should be.
I think that ties in almost to a lot of the like pro-life, pro-choice rhetoric that happens, especially in America, but that's also being imported over here recently, of a lot of pro-life, pro-choice sort of hybrid people are very much of this position of, well, I would never have an abortion, you know, I would never do that, but I don't think I should be able to decide what other people do in that. And that's obviously the perfect sort of middle ground, you know, of you can hold these standards for yourself and understand that not everyone is in the same situation as you, and not everyone wants to make the same decisions as you, and that doesn't make them a bad person, you know. And I think that's a lot of unpacking that needs to be done about the idea that just because someone wouldn't make your life choices doesn't mean they're wrong.
Help if you like, you know, help boost our voices, and if you can't help our voices, if you can't boost our voices, fill our pockets. Yeah. You know, and I don't mean like me. Don't just drop me £100 on fucking whatever payment processor will let me. There are, you know, like most of us will be constantly resharing sex workers, survival sex workers, people that are in need, trans sex workers, Indigenous sex workers, people that really need help. Line their fucking pockets. Run their money up. Yep. That's a conversation we need to be having, is that like, if you have the ability to help sex workers financially, do. If you don't want to pick a specific sex worker because you don't know if this person needs it more, donate it to an organisation. you know, I think that's a conversation that needs to be had as well. Like, you know, like listen to us, boost our voices, line our pockets.
Yes.
And if you feel like we've said something valuable, if you feel like you've learned something from a sex worker, fucking tip them. You don't have to like, especially like, and I can only really speak for like the femdom community for, you know what I mean? Like, but like most of us have a Cash App or something. Like, you don't have to like, you know, subscribe to our sites and like buy content. Like, if you feel like we said something important and like that you learned something, like you can drop us $5. You know what I mean? Or you can like retweet or repost our shit if like you don't have, or really comments drive the algorithm more than anything. You know what I mean? Like, there are ways to show support without money and with money without interacting with our content if that's not something that you believe is within your own personal morals and boundaries. But like,
yeah.
You like, more sex workers are survival workers than you think. Most of us just participate in class drag. And so, like, it doesn't matter what we put on the internet, you know what I mean? Like, my Coach wallet was a thrifted birthday present, like, but it's a Coach wallet, so, like, you know, class drag. So, yeah.
On the topic of donating to sex worker organisations, I am currently working alongside Queer Sex Work Kenya, who are working with 9 sex workers who recently lost their homes in a house fire. And so in the video description, I'll be dropping the link to their GoFundMe and their PayPal for anyone who is able to donate. Please do. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We will call it there, and I will let you know. I will let you know when the video is out, so you can have a look at it. Thank you all for joining.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Ethical. So nice to meet everyone.
Yeah, you are all really cool.